Chapter 1725. Looking at the 9 beast emperors trying to please him, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but want to laugh. He said with a straight face, "Not only do you have to guard the herb field, but you also have to build a home for me here." "Home? Is it for us to live in?" "We don't need it." The 9 beast emperors were stunned and asked. Qin Feiyang's face darkened and said, "It's mine." "So it's yours?" The 9 beast emperors smiled embarrassedly and asked, "Then do you want something low-key or luxurious? Do you want a tall palace or a simple building?" "Low-key. Simple." Qin Feiyang said. "Understood. I guarantee that it will be arranged properly for you." The 9 beast emperors patted their chests and vowed solemnly, "Then I'll wait and see." Qin Feiyang smiled and left the Black Tortoise realm. "Young master," a familiar voice immediately sounded. Qin Feiyang turned his head and saw Zhao Tailai standing next to Tang Hai looking at him. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, "Why are you only back now?" Zhao Tailai said, "I found a very strange place, so I was delayed for a while." Qin Feiyang was stunned and frowned. "What strange place?" "A big canyon. This subordinate discovered the aura of a seal in the canyon." Zhao Tailai said. "Seal?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Yes." Zhao Tailai nodded and said, "But when I entered the canyon to search, I couldn't find the source of the seal." "Seal," Qin Feiyang pondered. "Why would there be a seal on the 2nd level? Where is it?" Qin Feiyang asked. "East-south. It's very far. With my speed, it will take me 3 days to get there." Zhao Tailai said. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and looked at the two with a smile. "You two go and rest first. I'll go and see Zhuge Mingyang." "What about the seal in the canyon?" Zhao Tailai asked. "When we have time, we will go and investigate. I will first ask Zhuge Mingyang what the demon ancestor wants me to do on the 2nd level." Qin Feiyang said. "All right. Along the way, I also found quite a few medicinal herbs." Zhao Tailai nodded and took out another Cosmos sack. "Hand it over to Dan Wangkai." Qin Feiyang glanced at the Qingquan pouch and said with a smile. He then escorted Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai to the castle. Subsequently, he turned to look at the undead and hesitated for a moment. Then he decided to bring the undead into the Black Tortoise realm as well. Undead mountain range, deep in the desert. "Haha. Qin Feiyang, do you think you can kill me by leaving me alone in the desert? Naive and laughable. Sky demon flag, devour them all." Zhuge Mingyang stood amidst the raging winds and waves, laughing loudly towards the sky. The sky demon flag in his hand was surging with demonic qi. The undead in all directions were all devoured by the sky demon flag, accompanied by mournful wails. On the sky demon flag, there was a totem in the shape of a giant dragon. It had 9 heads and was filled with hostility. Originally, the entire totem was white, but now one of the heads of the totem had already turned blood red, as if it was dyed in blood. The aura it emitted was even more terrifying than before. "Continue to devour all the undead in this desert, and you will transform into a heaven-defying demon weapon." Zhuge Mingyang laughed wildly, his eyes filled with a bloodthirsty light. His entire person looked exceptionally ferocious. Heaven-defying demon weapon. High up in the sky, Qin Feiyang stood against the wind. Hearing Zhuge Mingyang's words, he immediately looked at the sky demon flag, his eyes filled with shock and doubt. This sky demon flag could actually transform into a heaven-defying demon weapon. If Zhuge Mingyang was not lying, then wouldn't leaving him in the desert be considered as fulfilling his wish? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang noticed that the undead next to him was actually shivering at this moment. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The undead pointed at the sky demon flag, its entire body emitting an incomparable wave of fear. It seems that this sky demon flag is really the nemesis of the undead. "No, we have to change the plan. We can't let him stay here and continue to devour the undead. Qin Feiyang muttered, looking at Zhuge Mingyang and the sky demon flag, his eyes flickering. Suddenly, a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes as he brought the undead into the castle. Everyone was cultivating in seclusion. Qin Feiyang looked at Yan Wei and said, "Yan Wei." Yan Wei opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang sighed. "Originally, I wanted you to break through to the 9-star War Emperor, so I set you up to hide by Zhuge Mingyang's side. But now that the situation has changed, we have to change the plan." Yan Wei nodded in realization and said with a smile, "You already have such a strong person by your side. It doesn't matter if I cultivate or not." "You can't say that." Hearing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel sad and blame himself. Yan Wei hurriedly said, "I don't mean anything else, don't misunderstand, but my ability to express myself is not good. I just want to say, you don't have to explain, I understand. I also promise you that this is the last time. In short, no one can replace you in my heart. Even if everyone becomes a god in the future, you will still be my best partner." Qin Feiyang said, "It's still us. We are also your family. We will never leave you." "Fatso!" And the others also opened their eyes and looked at Yan Wei. "Thank you." Yan Wei looked at everyone gratefully. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, looked at Yan Wei and asked, "Are you ready?" "Ready at any time." Yan Wei nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "Old Zhao." "This subordinate is here." Zhao Tailai said respectfully. Qin Feiyang said, "Injure Yan Wei heavily." "Yes." Zhao Tailai responded, walked to Yan Wei's side and sighed, "Brother, I've wronged you." "It's fine, come." Yan Wei smiled. Zhao Tailai waved his hand, and a strand of divine power appeared and entered Yan Wei's sea of qi. Yan Wei's face immediately distorted in pain. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel sad and couldn't bear to watch anymore, and left the castle with Cui Li. Cui Li sighed. "Young lord, this Yan Wei is loyal to you." "Yes, I owe him too much. After we kill the state preceptor, I will make it up to him." Qin Feiyang said. Cui Li nodded. Qin Feiyang looked down at Zhuge Mingyang, his eyes flashing coldly, and whispered to Cui Li, "Later, do this." After listening, Cui Li nodded. "Okay." Qin Feiyang exhaled, took a step forward with Cui Li, and landed in front of Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. Qin Feiyang said, "How does it feel to face this endless desert alone?" "Not bad." Zhuge Mingyang grinned. Qin Feiyang glanced at the sky demon flag, and with a wave of his hand, the three of them instantly left the desert and appeared above the ruins of Aeon City. "We're out already." Zhuge Mingyang stared blankly. This was too fast. "What? Still reluctant to leave the desert?" Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. "Am I?" Zhuge Mingyang put away the sky demon flag unnaturally and said angrily, "I hate the desert, and I don't want to go in again." "Don't want to go in again? I think you can't wait to enter the desert again." Qin Feiyang sneered. Zhuge Mingyang's pupils shrank, and he shook his head. "How is that possible?" "Stop pretending. Do you think I didn't see you using the sky demon flag to devour those dead souls?" Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. "Ah." Zhuge Mingyang was stunned, and then he laughed and said, "So you've already found out. Are you in such a hurry to bring me to the desert?" Qin Feiyang said, "I brought you out because I've already entered the second floor. As for those dead souls, I don't care about them at all." "So fast?" Zhuge Mingyang was surprised. He didn't know that during his time in the desert, Qin Feiyang had been to many places. Qin Feiyang said, "Your master wants me to help with something." "What is it?" "This is a secret. I can't tell you for the time being." Zhuge Mingyang shook his head. Cui Li's eyes flashed slightly, and he asked, "Young master, is it necessary to keep the confidant of the state preceptor?" "Nonsense." Qin Feiyang's face suddenly showed a trace of anger. This subordinate knows his mistake. Chui Li hurriedly said. The confidant of the state preceptor? At the same time, Zhuge Mingyang looked stunned. He looked at Qin Feiyang and Chui Li suspiciously and sneered. Brother Qin, there is no need to hide it. Is there? Qin Feiyang pretended to be innocent. Do you think I have a problem with my ears? Can't I hear you? Tell me, which confidant of the state preceptor fell into your hands? Zhuge Mingyang said. This is none of your business, Qin Feiyang said lightly. Nonsense. The state preceptor is my ancestor. His confidant is also my man. Do you think it has nothing to do with me? Hand him over quickly. Otherwise, when you find Lin Yi and the others, I can guarantee that you will find a corpse. Zhuge Mingyang laughed jokingly. Are you threatening me? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and stared at Zhuge Mingyang. His eyes flashed coldly. Yes, I am threatening you. Zhuge Mingyang shrugged with a bright smile on his face. Qin Feiyang's face was gloomy. He turned his head and glared at Chui Li. It's all your fault. You can't do anything right, but you are good at spoiling things. That's why, when you look for a subordinate in the future, you must remember to find a shrewd one. Zhuge Mingyang sneered. Chui Li glared at Zhuge Mingyang angrily. He knelt in front of Qin Feiyang and said with trepidation, I'm sorry, young master. I really didn't mean it. Humph. Go to the castle. Don't be an eyesore here. Qin Feiyang snorted from his nose. With a wave of his hand, he sent Chui Li to the castle. Then he looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said, Let's go out first. Zhuge Mingyang stretched out his hand and said, Don't. Give him back to me first. Qin Feiyang's face was as dark as water. Zhuge Mingyang shook his head and smiled. You don't have a choice. You can only listen to me. Okay, I'll give him back to you. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and said word by word. Then, he took Yan Wei out. So it's you. Yan Wei had changed his appearance. He looked exactly the same as when he was hiding beside the imperial tutor. When Zhuge Mingyang saw him, he immediately recognized him. Young master, save me. Yan Wei also hurriedly called out to Zhuge Mingyang. His body was covered in blood, and his face was full of helplessness. Zhuge Mingyang looked at Yan Wei's injuries and said angrily, Qin Feiyang, you are too much. You actually tortured him like this. It's good that you didn't kill him. Chapter 17:26. Zhuge Mingyang's gaze was cold as he shouted, Let him go! Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Yan Wei immediately flew towards Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang released the power of the false god to support Yan Wei, then took out a spirit sea pill and let Yan Wei consume it. Thank you, young master. Yan Wei took the spirit sea pill and quickly thanked him. Qin Feiyang said, I've given you the person. Can we go out now? Zhuge Mingyang looked around and said with a smile, To be honest, I really don't want to leave this place. Then why don't you stay here? Qin Feiyang said. Good idea. Let's make such a happy decision. Zhuge Mingyang nodded and smiled. Qin Feiyang was so angry that his whole body trembled. Of course, this was all an act. Forget it. I won't tease you anymore. Zhuge Mingyang chuckled and said, Before we go out, help me remove the devil mark. Qin Feiyang said, I can't remove it. You're the master of the Black Tortoise realm now. Can't you remove the devil mark? Do you think I'm stupid? Zhuge Mingyang sneered. You're really smart. Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth and said. Zhuge Mingyang smiled and said, I'm just S.O. Compared to you, I'm still far behind. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath. The heart of origin appeared and quickly removed the devil mark for Zhuge Mingyang. Then, with a wave of his hand, he brought the two of them and appeared in the divine sight. This is the second level. Zhuge Mingyang looked around curiously. Qin Feiyang said impatiently, Cut the crap. What do you want me to do? Don't be so impatient. Zhuge Mingyang chuckled. Then he turned around and took out a piece of animal skin from his chinkuan bag. Then he unfolded it and started to examine it carefully. Qin Feiyong tiptoed to take a look and found that it was actually a map. Just as he was about to walk in front of Zhuge Mingyang to check the map, Zhuge Mingyang put away the map. Qin Feiyong asked suspiciously, "Where is this map of? Does it have anything to do with you?" Zhuge Mingyang sneered, then raised his head to identify the direction and said, "Follow me." After saying that, with a wave of his hand, Zhuge Mingyang swept up Yan Wei and flew towards the southeast. Qin Feiyong furrowed his brows and followed behind the two unhurriedly. A moment later, Yan Wei's qi was finally restored. Zhuge Mingyang transmitted his voice. "How did you end up in Qin Feiyong's hands?" "It's a long story. A few days ago, everyone and I were recuperating in a water source on the first floor. Then, this Qin Feiyong suddenly appeared and killed all of us." Yan Wei secretly said. "Then why didn't he kill you?" Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed slightly and asked. "He knows that the Imperial Preceptor thinks highly of me and wants to force out the secrets of the Imperial Preceptor from me. But am I the kind of person who is afraid of death? These days he made that damn Fatso and Wolf King think of ways to torture me, but I'm not afraid at all. I thought that I would definitely die, but I didn't expect that I would meet you, young master. It's true that there's always a way out." Yan Wei said, "So that's how it is." Zhuge Mingyang suddenly nodded his head, then frowned and transmitted his voice. "That's not right. Doesn't he have the slave seal? Why didn't he use the slave seal to control you?" Obviously, he was very careful and didn't really believe in Yan Wei. But now he still didn't know that Qin Feiyong had mastered another kind of miraculous secret technique, the puppet technique. Because he knows that the Imperial Preceptor is controlling me with the blood soul technique. If he uses the slave seal to control me again, the blood soul technique will be erased, and at that time the Imperial Preceptor will be alarmed. Yan Wei transmitted his voice. He had already thought of these questions in advance and prepared the answers. Zhuge Mingyang said, "Then who are the people in his castle now?" "Let me think." Yan Wei lowered his head and pretended to think, but secretly transmitted his voice to Qin Feiyong. "Young master," Zhuge Mingyang asked me, "who are the people in the castle now? How should I answer?" Qin Feiyong secretly said, "Answer truthfully." Although there were many things that Zhuge Mingyang didn't know yet, but these things would be exposed sooner or later. If he hid something now, it might be extremely disadvantageous for Yan Wei in the future. Yan Wei trusted him so much and worked for him wholeheartedly. He must not put Yan Wei in danger. "Okay." Yan Wei secretly responded, looked at Zhuge Mingyang and transmitted his voice. "It's almost the same people as before." As soon as Yan Wei finished speaking, a murderous intent flashed in Zhuge Mingyang's eyes. Because he knew that there were more people around Qin Feiyong now, so he thought that Yan Wei was lying to him. Yan Wei said again, "However, there are more unfamiliar faces." Heard. The murderous intent in Zhuge Mingyang's eyes quietly dissipated and secretly said, "Who are they? What do they look like?" "There are two people who are the most eye-catching. One of them is called Zhao Tailai, the other is called Tang Hai. These two people's cultivation is very good. They seem to be the legendary war gods." Yan Wei secretly said, "Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, I know this Zhao Tailai. He is the deputy chief of the Vanga League, but who is this Tang Hai?" Zhuge Mingyang was suspicious. Yan Wei said, "I heard that Tang Hai is the Lord of the Nether Hall." "What, the Lord of the Nether Hall? Didn't he leave with the Guardian? Why is he with Qin Feiyong?" "Are you sure?" Zhuge Mingyang secretly said. "I'm sure." Yan Wei nodded. "It seems that a lot of things have happened during this period." Zhuge Mingyang secretly muttered and said in a deep voice, "Did you see Ning Mingi and Li Yin?" Ning Mingi, Li Yin. Yan Wei was stunned and secretly said, "I've heard of these two names. From what they said, they seem to be dead." "Dead." Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows. I don't know the details. Oh, right, there's another person. His name is Li Jian. He used to be the confidant of the Grand Master. Not only did he follow Qin Feiyang, but he also thought that he had broken through to the false god realm. He's now trying to break through to the war god realm in the castle. Yan Wei said, What? He's already become a war god. That damn traitor. Zhuge Mingyang was furious. Yan Wei secretly said, Young master, why are you in the Black Tortoise world? It's a long story. I'll tell you when I have the chance. Zhuge Mingyang secretly said. He then turned to Qin Feiyang and asked curiously, Brother Qin, I remember that the people of the Vanga League and the Fengtian Palace followed you. Where are they now? Have they broken through to the war god realm? They're dead. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Dead? How is that possible? They're so strong. Who can kill them? Zhuge Mingyang was shocked. They were killed by the giant python. Qin Feiyang said. Really? Zhuge Mingyang couldn't believe it. These people followed Qin Feiyang. If they really met the giant python, they could hide in the Black Tortoise world. How could they die? Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. These ungrateful people deserve to die. Ungrateful? Zhuge Mingyang was stunned and asked, What do you mean? Back then, when I became the ruler of the Black Tortoise world and helped them get rid of the devil mark and regain their freedom, they actually turned against me. I'm kind and generous. Seeing that we used to fight side by side, I let them go. Unfortunately, not long after they left, they were killed by the giant python and the fire dragon. I saw them die in front of me with my own eyes. Qin Feiyang said, I see. Zhuge Mingyang smiled and said, These people really don't know what's good for them. Damn it. What about the fire dragon and the giant python? The giant python is also dead. As for the fire dragon, I don't know. Where is it now? Qin Feiyang said, What? The giant python is dead. How did it die? Zhuge Mingyang turned pale with fright. The fire dragon and I worked together to kill it. Qin Feiyang said. This. Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of shock as he asked, What exactly is going on? Qin Feiyang said expressionlessly, I'm not obliged to tell you. Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows. Yan Wei suddenly said, Young master, there's one more thing. It's definitely a surprise for you. What is it? Zhuge Mingyang asked secretly. Yan Wei smiled and said, Lord Imperial Tutor and Lord Emperor Hong have both stepped into the war god realm. Zhuge Mingyang was stunned and said secretly, How do you know? Not long after Qin Feiyang entered the second floor, he met Lord Emperor Hong and Lord Imperial Tutor. They even fought a big battle. Wasn't the place where Qin Feiyang brought us to the Black Tortoise realm a mess that was caused by their battle? Yan Wei thought. What was the result? Zhuge Mingyang asked. Yan Wei said, Qin Feiyang almost died in the hands of Lord Imperial Tutor, but was saved by the second floor's Beast Emperor in the end. The second floor's Beast Emperor? Zhuge Mingyang frowned. Yes, the second floor's Beast Emperor is helping him. Yan Wei said suspiciously. How could such a thing happen? Zhuge Mingyang frowned, unable to understand, and asked, Then where are the ancestor and Emperor Hong now? I don't know. Yan Wei shook his head. Are you really the ancestor and the Imperial Tutor? Zhuge Mingyang asked. Although I was imprisoned in the castle at that time, I heard their voices clearly. There's no mistake. Yan Wei thought. Very good. Since the ancestor and Emperor Hong have both broken through to the war god realm, then we don't have to be afraid of Qin Feiyang anymore. Zhuge Mingyang was overjoyed. Yan Wei said, Although you're right, it's best not to clash with him in the miracle. After all, these beast emperors are not to be trifled with. You're right. Let's endure it for now. When we return to the Great Qin, we'll slowly settle the score with him. Zhuge Mingyang secretly sneered. His suspicions towards Yan Wei had completely disappeared. Roar! Suddenly, accompanied by the roar of a beast, a huge beast rushed out from the forest below and stood in front of the three of them. It was a beast emperor of the small success stage of the war god realm. Seeing this, Zhuge Mingyang and Yan Wei's faces immediately turned pale. The beast emperor stared at Zhuge Mingyang and Zhuge Mingyang, its entire body emitting a fierce aura. But when it saw Qin Feiyang behind the two of them, its fierce aura immediately dissipated, and it laughed. So it's Brother Qin. I hope you can forgive me for offending you. It's fine. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. All right then, I'll take my leave first. The Beast Emperor smiled flatteringly, then turned around and disappeared into the forest. This. Chapter 17:27. He didn't believe what Yan Wei said before, but he didn't expect it to be true. It was even more exaggerated than what Yan Wei said. He actually called the Beast Emperor here brother. After a long while, Zhuge Mingyang came back to his senses and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Brother Qin, what's going on? My character is good. Qin Feiyang shrugged and said, Good character? The corner of Zhuge Mingyang's mouth twitched. Only a ghost would believe such a lousy excuse. He glanced at Yan Wei and said, You said that you were captured by Qin Feiyang on the first floor. Yes. Yan Wei nodded. These beast emperors helped him. I think they must have reached some agreement with Qin Feiyang. Since you were captured on the first floor, you should have entered the second floor with Qin Feiyang. Although you are imprisoned, you can hear the movements outside. Have you heard anything these days? Zhuge Mingyang said secretly. I vaguely heard that it seems to be related to the Guardian. Yan Wei thought. Guardian? Zhuge Mingyang was even more puzzled. Wasn't the giant python dead? How could it be related to the Guardian? Wait, could it be that a new Guardian had appeared? And this Guardian had a close relationship with Qin Feiyang? If that was the case, it would be bad. It seemed that he couldn't fall out with Qin Feiyang in the miracle. Yan Wei asked calmly, Young master, where are we going to take Qin Feiyang now? Zhuge Mingyang smiled and said, You will know when we get there. Yan Wei nodded. In case Zhuge Mingyang was suspicious, he didn't ask further. Zhuge Mingyang pondered for a moment and said inwardly, After Qin Feiyang captured you, what did he interrogate you about? News of his mother, his grandfather, Lin Yi, and the mermaid princess. But I don't even know where they are. Yan Wei said, Of course you don't, because these things are only known to me and my ancestor. Zhuge Mingyang said, Then where are they? Yan Wei was curious, but then he hurriedly said, Young master, I'm sorry. I forgot the rules. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Since you're so loyal to me and my ancestors, there's no harm in telling you. Lin Yi and the mermaid princess are now in the sea of reincarnation. Zhuge Mingyang said. As for Qin Feiyang's mother and grandfather, he did not mention a single word. Sea of reincarnation? Yan Wei was suspicious. Yes, they are now my master's disciples, which means they are my junior sisters. But they don't know that my master has a grudge with Qin Batian. Master accepted them as disciples. On the surface, it was said that he took a fancy to their aptitude, but in fact it was to deal with Qin Feiyang. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. Deal with Qin Feiyang? Yan Wei was suspicious. Yes, think about it. These two are Qin Feiyang's most beloved women. How interesting is it to let them and Qin Feiyang kill each other? Zhuge Mingyang said. I see. Young master's move is really brilliant. Yan Wei laughed secretly. Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand and said, This is not my idea. It's my master's idea. Young master, I didn't expect you to have a master. I'm really surprised. He must be very strong. Yan Wei said. Of course. It's all thanks to my master that my ancestor and I can be where we are today. When there's a chance, I'll introduce you to my master. At that time, you can easily get a few divine objects and techniques. Zhuge Mingyang said secretly. Thank you for your guidance, young master. In the future, I will definitely do my best for young master and the state preceptor. Yan Wei was very surprised and quickly thanked him secretly. Zhuge Mingyang laughed secretly and said appreciatively, Not bad, not bad. No wonder my ancestor likes you so much even though your cultivation is so weak. My cultivation is indeed a little weak. Yan Wei smiled embarrassedly. Cultivation is not important. What is important is loyalty. As long as you are loyal, I guarantee you a promising future, Zhuge Mingyang said. Yes, yes, yes. Yan Wei nodded again and again. Zhuge Mingyang smiled proudly and didn't say anything else. Yan Wei looked at Zhuge Mingyang's back, and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. He said to Qin Feiyang, Young master, I asked Zhuge Mingyang. Lin Yi and others are indeed in the sea of reincarnation. What about my mother and grandfather? Qin Feiyang was refreshed and said secretly. He didn't say, and I didn't dare to ask more. Yan Wei said. Very good. Try not to ask. What else did he say? Qin Feiyang said. He also said that demon ancestor and your ancestor had grudge, and demon ancestor accepted Lin Yi and others as disciples to let you kill each other. Yan Wei said, Damn bastard. Qin Feiyang cursed and said secretly, Do Lin Yi and others know about this? Yan Wei said, Listening to Zhuge Mingyang, they shouldn't know. By the way, Zhuge Mingyang also said that when there is an opportunity, he will recommend me to demon ancestor. What? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Although it's a bit dangerous, I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Because in this way, I can find out demon ancestor's lair. Maybe I can even find out the details of demon ancestor. Yan Wei said secretly. No. Qin Feiyang refused decisively. Yan Wei had already done a lot for him. He couldn't let Yan Wei take such a big risk again. Yan Wei was silent for a while and smiled secretly. Then let's talk about this later. Time passed day by day. Along the way, the three encountered many beasts, but without exception, they all made way when they saw Qin Feiyang. Finally, half a month later, in the morning, a large canyon appeared in the sight of Qin Feiyang and the other two. The canyon was surrounded by mountains on all sides, towering into the clouds. There was only one narrow entrance and exit, and there were beasts all around. The lowest was a 9-star emperor beast. There were no less than a dozen warlord beast emperors, not to mention ordinary people. Even a warlord would find it difficult to get close to the canyon. But under the leadership of Qin Feiyang, the three passed through the mountains unimpeded and came to the entrance of the canyon. Seeing Zhuge Mingyang stop, Qin Feiyang said suspiciously, You want to bring me here? Yes. Zhuge Mingyang nodded. Yan Wei also looked at the canyon in front of him curiously. Zhuge Mingyang said again, This place actually has some connections with you. Connections? Qin Feiyang frowned. Come in with me. Zhuge Mingyang smiled mysteriously and took the lead to step into the canyon. Yan Wei followed closely behind him. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuge Mingyang's back and followed in. When he stepped into the entrance, he was immediately stunned. He suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. What's going on? Following behind Zhuge Mingyang, he finally entered the canyon through the long and narrow entrance. The canyon in front of him was a few miles wide and flat. In the canyon, there were no tall trees. The ground was covered with green weeds, and blooming wildflowers could be seen everywhere. And in the center of the canyon, there was a lake that covered an area of about half a mile. The lake's surface was calm and the water was extremely clear. This place could be said to have a pleasant scenery and was very suitable for people to cultivate their mind and spirit here. But at the same time, Qin Feiyang felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity and his heart became stronger and stronger. Why do I feel this way? Qin Feiyang glanced at the canyon, his eyes full of suspicion. Wait, the canyon, southeast direction. It can't be so coincidental, right? Qin Feiyang suddenly remembered that Zhao Tailai also found a canyon in the southeast direction. As for the distance, Zhao Tailai said it would take 3 days, but that was based on Zhao Tailai's own speed. After all, Zhao Tailai was a war god. His speed was much faster than Qin Feiyang, a pseudo-god. In other words, it was very likely that this was the canyon that Zhao Tailai mentioned. But could there be such a coincidence? He hurriedly pulled Zhao Tailai out of the castle and asked with a smile, "Have you cultivated well?" Zhuge Mingyang looked at Zhao Tailai and his pupils shrank slightly. He had indeed broken through to the war god realm. "I've cultivated well." Zhao Tailai nodded to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said, "Look at this canyon. Is it the same place as the canyon you saw?" Zhao Tailai glanced at the canyon, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. He nodded and said, "Young master, yes. It's actually the same place." Qin Feiyang muttered, turned to look at Zhuge Mingyang and said, "You brought me here. Is it because of that seal?" "You actually know about the existence of the seal?" Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. Yan Wei sent a sound transmission. "Young master, this Zhao Tailai has been to this place before." "So that's how it is." Zhuge Mingyang suddenly understood and nodded. "You guessed right. I'm here for this seal." "Since you're here for this seal, then you must know what's sealed here," Qin Feiyang said. "That's right," Zhuge Mingyang said. "What is it?" Qin Feiyang asked. "It's a secret." Zhuge Mingyang smiled mysteriously, turned around and led Yan Wei towards the lake. Qin Feiyang and Zhao Tailai looked at each other and followed in big strides. Zhao Tailai said in a low voice, "Young master, the aura of the seal comes from that lake, but I've searched all over the lake and couldn't find the source of the seal. Zhuge Mingyang definitely knows. We just have to follow him." Qin Feiyang said. The 4 of them came to the lake, one after another. Qin Feiyang looked at the lake and his gaze trembled slightly. The moment he came to the lake, the sense of familiarity that had been pervading in his heart instantly became incomparably intense. It could even be described as blood is thicker than water. This is, his hands gradually clenched, and there was a trace of unconcealable excitement in his eyes. "Young master, what's wrong with you?" Zhao Tailai looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. "This is the aura of my ancestor," Qin Feiyang said excitedly. There was indeed an aura of the seal in the lake. The owner of the aura, according to his judgment, was his ancestor, the Qin Emperor. In other words, the seal here was left by his ancestor, the Qin Emperor. Zhao Tailai and Yan Wei's bodies trembled slightly, and they suddenly looked at the lake in disbelief. Zhuge Mingyang, however, was not surprised at all. Obviously, he already knew. Qin Feiyang calmed down the fluctuations in his heart, turned to look at Zhuge Mingyang, and asked, "This is the origin that you mentioned to me?" "Yes." Chapter 1728. What exactly is sealed here? Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Zhuge Mingyang said, "You will naturally know later." Zhao Tailai glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and transmitted his voice. "Young master, be careful. There may be a trap inside." "I know," Qin Feiyang secretly replied and lowered his head to scan the lake. Since this seal was left by the ancestor, then the thing in this lake must have been sealed by the ancestor himself. The ancestor ruled the world with benevolence and compassion. It was impossible for him to seal a person or thing here for no reason. Thus it could be seen, what was sealed here was definitely not a good thing. Wait, the seal was the ancestor's. Did Zhuge Mingyang bring him here to ask him to help open the seal? And everything that Zhuge Mingyang did was ordered by the mysterious demon ancestor. Could it be the thing sealed here was related to the demon ancestor? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang's face suddenly darkened and he shouted, "Zhao Tailai, let's go!" "Yes," Zhao Tailai replied respectfully. "Go." Zhuge Mingyang was slightly stunned. He hurriedly turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Where are we going?" Qin Feiyang said lightly, "I am not interested in this place." "Not interested? This is the seal left by your ancestor." "Don't you want to know what he sealed?" Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. Qin Feiyang stopped, lowered his head, and pondered for a moment. Without turning his head, he said, "It is because it is the seal left by the ancestor that I have to go." Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows and looked at Qin Feiyang's back. Suddenly, he showed a look of realization and said with a smile, "It seems that you have guessed something?" Qin Feiyang said, "Then my guess, is it true or false?" Zhuge Mingyang frowned and said, "True or false, false or true, does it matter?" "Of course," Qin Feiyang said. "All right, I'm telling you in advance. A person is sealed here." Zhuge Mingyang pondered for a while and gritted his teeth. "Fiend ancestor?" Qin Feiyang asked. "So you thought that the one sealed here was my master?" Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. "Isn't it?" Qin Feiyang turned around and looked at Zhuge Mingyang's expression. "No." Zhuge Mingyang shook his head and smiled. "The person sealed here is related to Mu Tianyang." "What?" Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. This answer was simply too unexpected. "You probably don't know, but Mu Tianyang actually has a younger brother called Mu Tianjun. This Mu Tianjun was also a god of war. His strength and character were similar to Mu Tianyang's. He was domineering and killed people without hesitation. Back then, this person was seriously injured by your ancestor and sealed. This time I brought you here to completely end this person's life." Zhuge Mingyang said. "Mu Tianjun," Qin Feiyang murmured. He had never heard of this name before. There was no record of it even in the relevant ancient books. Zhuge Mingyang said, "You must be thinking that if Mu Tianjun really exists in this world, then the history books of the Imperial Palace will definitely record it." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Let me tell you, there is indeed a history book that records information about Mu Tianjun." Zhuge Mingyang said with a smile. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "Why didn't I see it?" Zhuge Mingyang said, "You didn't see it because this history book was not hidden in the Imperial Palace, but in the hands of my ancestor." Qin Feiyang said, "Hearsay is false, but seeing is believing." "I knew you would say that, so before I left, I specially went to my ancestor and asked for that history book. And this book was written by your ancestor, Emperor Qin himself." After saying that, Zhuge Mingyang took out a book from his Qinkuan bag. The book had been specially treated and would not decay even after tens of thousands of years. It looked as if it was new. "Written by my ancestor." Qin Feiyang looked at the book in Zhuge Mingyang's hand, and his eyes trembled slightly. The information about Mu Tianjun is recorded on pages 52 and 53. Take a look yourself. Zhuge Mingyang threw the book to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang took the book and turned to the first page, which was full of small words. After careful identification, he found that the words on it were indeed written by his ancestor. He quickly turned to page 52. The first thing he saw was the words Mu Tianjun. Below, it was an introduction of Mu Tianjun's identity and all his evil deeds. Even how Mu Tianjun had sealed it was clearly recorded. Zhao Tailai also walked to Qin Feiyang, looking at Zhuge Mingyang warily while reading the content. After a careful check, Qin Feiyang closed the book and looked up at the lake, feeling emotional. The kindness of his ancestor was really beyond his reach. Zhuge Mingyang didn't lie. The person sealed here was indeed Mu Tianjun. Back then, Mu Tianjun sneakily attacked one of his ancestor's subordinates and cut off his head. When his ancestor learned about this, he was furious. He came here and fought with Mu Tianjun for a day and a night, finally injuring Mu Tianjuan's divine soul. Originally, Mu Tianjun was going to die, but the ancestor thought that the heavens were virtuous and let go of Mu Tianjuan's remnant soul. And he didn't destroy Mu Tianjuan's divine body and seal it here. In other words, what was sealed here was only a divine body without consciousness and soul. He killed his subordinates, but he still let go of a trace of Mu Tianjuan's soul. The Qin Emperor's kindness is indeed worthy of his reputation. Zhao Tailai also sighed. Although I respect my ancestor very much, I really don't agree with this point. Evil people should be punished. Kindness will only make them more rampant, Qin Feiyang said. That's right, Zhuge Mingyang nodded. Don't fan the flames. Although Mu Tianjun does deserve to be killed, this is just a divine body. I don't think it matters whether it is destroyed or not, Qin Feiyang said. Wrong, Zhuge Mingyang said. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang frowned. Didn't you see the historical records that Mu Tianjun still has a trace of his soul in the world? To tell you the truth, my master has been looking for the whereabouts of Mu Tianjuan's soul for a long time. According to my master, Mu Tianjuan's soul has been hiding in the Mu family on the Forgotten Continent. And now, it is very likely that it is in the hands of Mu Tianyang. And after all these years of cultivation, Mu Tianjuan's soul has been repaired, and now it is a complete divine soul. Do you know how big a threat a complete divine soul is to us? Zhuge Mingyang said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang's face darkened when he heard this. Zhuge Mingyang said again, Do you know the biggest purpose of Mu Tianyang entering the miracle this time? To save Mu Tianjuan's divine body? Qin Feiyang said. That's right. Mu Tianjun is not only his younger brother, but his strength is also on par with him. When Mu Tianjuan's divine body is freed and merged with his divine soul, Mu Tianjun will wake up and directly recover to his peak state. There's one more thing that I'm afraid you don't know. Mu Tianyang also has a heaven-defying artifact. Zhuge Mingyang said. I've already seen it, Qin Feiyang said. You've seen it? Zhuge Mingyang was a little surprised and asked suspiciously, When did this happen? Why didn't I know? That's not the point, Qin Feiyang said. Zhuge Mingyang took a deep look at Qin Feiyang and said, Since you know, then you should also understand that when Mu Tianjun revives, the great Qin will have no power to resist at all. Qin Feiyang fell silent. Therefore, we must destroy Mu Tianjuan's divine body before Mu Tianyang arrives. In this way, Mu Tianjuan's divine soul can only find someone to possess. But it's very difficult to find someone who is on par with him in the world today. Of course, it's not impossible. However, those who are on par with him can't just stand there and let him possess them. If the other party resists, he may fail to possess them by force. I don't think Mu Tianjun will dare to take such a risk. So I'm sure that when he possesses someone, he will definitely find someone weaker than him. In this way, even if he succeeds, he won't be able to exert all his strength, and we won't be so passive. Zhuge Mingyang said. Qin Feiyang was silent. Zhao Tailai pondered for a moment and transmitted his voice. Young master, what he said makes sense. Don't you have a master? It's just Mu Tianyang, Mu Tianjun. What are you afraid of? Qin Feiyang looked up at Zhuge Mingyang and said lightly. Zhuge Mingyang said, My master is indeed very strong, but for some reason he can't do anything, so we can only rely on ourselves. I once heard a legend that the demon ancestor and the demon dragon were killed one after another. I don't think this is a legend. Even if the demon ancestor is still alive, he should only be in the state of a remnant soul now. Qin Feiyang said. Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, Who did you hear that from? Qin Feiyang thought for a moment and shook his head. It's been too long. I can't remember. Zhuge Mingyang looked at Qin Feiyang with a complicated expression. Boss, I think your cousin Lu Zheng said that. Fatso's voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. Cousin? Qin Feiyang was stunned. After thinking about it carefully, his gaze trembled. It seemed to be Lu Zheng who said that. Back then, when this rumor was mentioned, it was because of the blood soul technique. He remembered that time. Wang Yongfeng and the people in the village were controlled by the blood soul technique. According to Lu Zheng, the blood soul technique was created by the demon ancestor. The demon ancestor once used this blood soul technique to enslave countless powerhouses and stir up trouble. In the end, 2 war gods appeared and set up a killing trap to kill the demon ancestor. In order to avenge its master, the demon dragon also began to do evil everywhere. In the end, it was also cut into 8 pieces and sealed in various places. Before the demon dragon died, in order to take revenge on humans, it passed the blood soul technique to everyone under its control at that time. Therefore, the blood soul technique had been passed down to this day. When he first heard this rumor, Qin Feiyang thought it was just a simple legend. So he didn't take it seriously. So he slowly forgot about it. Chapter 1729. In other words, everything that Lu Zheng had said had actually happened before. Wait. Suddenly, a trace of bewilderment appeared in Qin Feiyang's eyes. What Lu Zheng said was confirmed. Did it mean that Lu Zheng knew the truth? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang turned to Zhao Tailai and said, "Wait for me here. I'll go to Ling Yunfei's space treasure." Okay. Zhao Tailai nodded. Qin Feiyang flashed and appeared above a mountain. He closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Then he appeared by a river. He saw Lu Zheng sitting cross-legged on a blue stone, fishing silently. How's the progress? Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed beside Lu Zheng. He asked with a smile. Lu Zheng smiled and said, "The Crocodile Emperor has told me that you and Li Jian comprehended the mysteries of becoming a god. I benefited a lot." Qin Feiyang said, "It seems that we will have another fake god soon." "How can it be so easy?" Lu Zheng smiled bitterly and asked suspiciously, "What are you doing here?" Qin Feiyang said, "I have something to ask you. I hope you won't hide anything and tell me the truth." "What is it?" Lu Zheng was puzzled. Qin Feiyang asked, "Do you remember the origin of the blood soul technique that you told me?" The origin of the blood soul technique? Lu Zheng was stunned. He tried to recall for a moment and said, "I think I did tell you. The demon ancestor and the demonic dragon that you mentioned are now confirmed. They really exist. Tell me, is this a coincidence?" Qin Feiyang asked. "What do you mean?" Lu Zheng looked at Qin Feiyang with a puzzled face. Qin Feiyang said, "You should know what I mean." Lu Zheng thought for a while and frowned. "You suspect that I'm lying to you? Lin Yi, mermaid princess, mother, and even grandfather are involved with the demon ancestor. Shouldn't I suspect you?" Qin Feiyang said angrily. Lu Zheng suddenly smiled and said, "So you think that I knew the truth, but kept it from you and didn't tell you?" "Isn't it?" Qin Feiyang said. Lu Zheng shook his head and sighed. "Cousin, I can tell you responsibly that I really don't know. When I told you about Demon Alpha and Demon Dragon, it was purely because of the blood soul technique." Qin Feiyang frowned. "You still don't believe me? Let me explain it to you like this. Before I learned that the demon ancestor and the demon dragon really existed, I also thought that they were just legends." Lu Zheng said. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Zheng's expression. There was no trace of deception, so he asked, "Does big cousin know?" "How would I know? You have to ask him." "But you have to be mentally prepared. Even if big brother knows, he will probably hide it from you, like second grandpa and the others." Lu Zheng said, "I'm no longer a child." Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly. "Don't I think so too? But in their eyes we are children. I'm afraid that we can't bear the pressure." Lu Zheng sighed and smiled again. But without relying on them, can't we still find out the truth? Although there is still a distance from the truth, at least we have the main clues. Don't you think so? We don't take the credit. I've always been the one investigating, okay? You've been hiding here to cultivate. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Is there a distinction between brothers? Your credit is also my credit. Lu Zheng said with dissatisfaction. Fine, it's all your credit. Go on, hero. I won't disturb you anymore. Qin Feiyang looked at him helplessly. Then he left the spatial divine item and appeared in the canyon. Zhuge Mingyang asked, Brother Qin, what do you think? Qin Feiyang looked at the lake and said, Am I the only one who can break the seal here? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed, and he said anxiously, Mu Tianyang must have a way to break it. We have to get ahead of him. Mu Tianyang, Qin Feiyang murmured. Brother Qin, we really can't hesitate on this matter. We have to solve it as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles. Zhuge Mingyang urged. Ha! Qin Feiyang suddenly laughed. What are you laughing at? Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang sneered and said, I don't think your purpose of bringing me here is so simple. Look at what you're saying. What other purpose can I have? Zhuge Mingyang was unhappy. Do you know? In the past, I had an agreement with Mu Tianyang. I couldn't understand this agreement. But just now, I carefully thought about it for a while. After connecting the causes and effects, I suddenly understood. Qin Feiyang said. What agreement? Zhuge Mingyang was suspicious. Back then, Mu Tianyang asked me to do something for him after entering the divine ruins. I think it should be for this, Mu Tianjun. Qin Feiyang smiled. This question had puzzled him for a long time. In the past, when he was weak, Mu Tianyang had the chance to kill him. But why didn't he do it? And even gave him the alchemy scripture? Now, the truth finally surfaced. All that Mu Tianyang did was to train him and make him stronger as soon as possible. Then they would enter the divine ruins together and help Mu Tianyang escape. And who is Mu Tianyang? If Mu Tianyang really had the ability to break the seal, why did he train him? Therefore, there was only one explanation. He was the only one who could break the seal here. But now, Zhuge Mingyang said that Mu Tianyang definitely had a way to break the seal. He was obviously lying. Then there was a problem. Why did Zhuge Mingyang lie to him? And why was he so eager to break the seal? There was a lot of story behind this. At the same time, hearing Qin Feiyang's words, Zhuge Mingyang also lowered his head and frowned. Mu Tianyang and Qin Feiyang actually had such an agreement? If that was the case, then didn't what he said before reveal his problem? This bastard is really difficult to deal with. Zhuge Mingyang couldn't help but curse in his heart. You must be feeling guilty. Let's not beat around the bush. Why do you want me to break this seal? Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and looked at Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang stared at Qin Feiyang. His eyes flickered. Suddenly he shook his head and smiled. You are really not easy to deal with. Speaking of this, his face suddenly sank, and he said word by word, I can't tell you the reason. You still have to break the seal. You want to threaten me again? Said Qin Feiyang. I don't want to threaten you, but if you force me, I don't mind doing so. You have to think clearly. You won't lose anything at all if you break the seal. If you don't break it, I'm afraid you can't bear the consequences. Said Zhuge Mingyang. Even if I help you break the seal now, will you let Lin Yi and the others go? Don't think I'm stupid. Unless you bring Lin Yi and the mermaid princess to me now, said Yang Ming. Said Qin Feiyang. Zhuge Mingyang said angrily, they're not in Miracle now. How can I bring them to you? That's your business. Qin Feiyang said expressionlessly. Zhuge Mingyang's face suddenly became gloomy. Swish! However, at this moment, Zhuge Mingyang's temperament and breath suddenly changed. Qin Feiyang was familiar with this breath. It was the demon ancestor hidden in Zhuge Mingyang's body. Seeing this, Zhao Tailai immediately stood in front of Qin Feiyang, staring at Zhuge Mingyang at this moment with a vigilant face. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at Zhao Tailai and didn't put him in his eyes. He looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. "Little friend, long time no see." His voice also became different. "You are finally willing to come out." Qin Feiyang sneered. "Originally, I didn't want to come out, but you are too difficult to deal with. I can only do it myself," Zhuge Mingyang said. To be precise, it was the demon ancestor who was talking. Qin Feiyang sneered. "You want me to help you unlock the seal when you come out? Although I don't have much contact with you, I know you. It's basically impossible for you to take the initiative to help me. So, I can only use some means to make you obedient," Demon Ancestor said. "Then bring it on." Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Boom! Before his voice fell, Zhao Tailai released his aura and was ready to fight. Demon Ancestor glanced at Zhao Tailai and smiled. "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you." Zhao Tailai didn't believe his nonsense and was still on guard. Demon Ancestor waved his hand, and a white divine light swept out from between his eyebrows. When it appeared in the void, it was a crystal stone. The size of the crystal stone was about the size of an egg. It was crystal clear and flickered with a hazy light. And inside the crystal stone, there was a pair of golden wings. "It looks familiar." Qin Feiyang looked at the pair of wings, his brows full of suspicion. Demon Ancestor said, "This is the mermaid princess's wings." "What? You actually took away her wings?" Qin Feiyang's body shook, and a monstrous killing intent appeared in his eyes. He had a deep impression of this pair of wings. It appeared when the mermaid princess was receiving the inheritance in the mermaid clan's sacred land. "I didn't take it away. I just temporarily sealed it in this crystal stone. However, if you don't listen, then I might destroy this pair of wings when I get angry. You probably don't know how important this pair of wings is to the mermaid princess, especially this golden pair of wings. Once the wings are destroyed, the mermaid princess will follow, speaking of which." Demon Ancestor didn't continue, and a smile flashed in his eyes. "Will she die?" Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. "She won't die, but her talent will disappear with this pair of wings. In other words, she will become a cripple with mediocre talent. You once had your cultivation crippled and expelled from the imperial capital. I think you should know better than anyone what it feels like to have your talent crippled. But I can tell you with certainty that if the mermaid princess's talent is crippled, she will suffer more than you. Because for a man she loves, she has been desperately cultivating. She wants to become stronger. Stay by this man's side, help him and take care of him. For this, she can pay any price. Think about it. Once she loses her talent, what will she do? She will despair. She will be helpless. She will see no hope and feel that she is no longer worthy of that man. In the end, she might even think of death." Chapter 1730. Despicable, shameless. "Give me the wings." Qin Feiyang was furious as he pounced towards the crystal that was floating in the air. However, with a wave of his hand, the crystal immediately landed in his hands. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was about to pounce towards the demon ancestor, Zhao Tailai hurriedly stepped forward and pulled him back, shouting, "Young master, calm down!" Qin Feiyang landed on the ground and stared at the demon ancestor with bloodshot eyes. "I think you know who the man that the mermaid princess loves is without me telling you." The demon ancestor laughed and said. Qin Feiyang's body trembled as he clutched his chest. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. The pain was unbearable. Of course he knew who this man was. All these years, he had never met the mermaid princess because he was afraid of implicating her. But who would have thought that this silly woman would actually run to the sacred palace and be taken away by the demon ancestor in the end? Man proposes, God disposes. Why was she so stupid? Couldn't she just stay in the sea of despair and wait for him to return? The demon ancestor laughed. Child, decide! Shut up. Who is your child? You are not worthy of being an elder. Qin Feiyang roared. Sigh. If you're obedient, why would I do this? The demon ancestor sighed. Qin Feiyang looked at him gloomily and said, I have a condition. Give me her wings, and I will help you break the seal. Sure. The demon ancestor nodded in agreement without even thinking about it. Give it to me now, Qin Feiyang said. No problem. The demon ancestor nodded. So straightforward. There can't be any conspiracy, right? Zhao Tailai frowned. Wrong. I believe in this child's character. The demon ancestor smiled, and with a wave of his hand, the crystal flew out and arrived in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang raised his hands and held the crystal. Looking at the golden wings inside, his eyes became gentle as he muttered, Wait for me. I will definitely save you. After saying that, he decisively put the crystals back into his sea of qi and lifted his head to look at the demon ancestor. He found that Zhuge Mingyang's aura and presence had changed back. Obviously, the fiend ancestor had already retreated. Master really trusts you. He actually gave you the wings first. Zhuge Mingyang snorted. Qin Feiyang didn't beat around the bush and said, Tell me, how do I undo the seal? Zhuge Mingyang said, Use your purple gold dragon soul, purple gold dragon blood, and purple gold dragon qi. So I need these 3 things. No wonder you and Mu Tianyang are so scheming. Qin Feiyang said, There's no other way. Who asked you to be the only person in the world who can break the seal? To be honest, sometimes I'm quite jealous of you. We're both geniuses of Great Qin, so why is there such a huge gap between us? Zhuge Mingyang pouted. Heaven's chosen one, you're not worthy. Qin Feiyang smiled contemptuously and strode towards the lake. If I'm not worthy, are you? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed with a hint of hostility and then followed behind Qin Feiyang to the lake. Yan Wei had been following beside Zhuge Mingyang the entire time and didn't say a word. Because the more you talk, the more you'll make mistakes. If he could keep silent, he would do his best to keep silent. Zhuge Mingyang scanned the surface of the lake and said, The first step is to use your purple gold dragon blood to summon the seal. How? Qin Feiyang asked. Zhuge Mingyang said, Just drip the purple gold dragon blood into the lake. Qin Feiyang cut his finger. Zhao Tailai suddenly grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand and said in a low voice, Young master, wait a moment. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Zhuge Mingyang and Yan Wei were also puzzled. Mu Tianyang entered the second level before us. If he's really here for Heavenly Lord Mu, he will definitely come here as soon as possible. So before we unlock the seal, I think we should use our divine sense to search the nearby area. Zhao Tailai said. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and nodded. You're very thoughtful. Let's go and have a look. Yes. Zhao Tailai bowed and responded. He rose into the air and stood above the canyon, and his divine sense surged in all directions. Yan Wei said, Young master, do you want to have a look too? Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand and said with a smile, No, Brother Qin's subordinates are enough. Yan Wei glanced at Qin Feiyang and frowned. Aren't you afraid that they'll play tricks? Mu Tianyang and Heavenly Lord Mu are our common enemies. Brother Qin is such a smart person. How can he play tricks? Brother Qin, you're right. Zhuge Mingyang looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile. Qin Feiyang didn't want to talk to him at all. Yan Wei didn't say anything more. After a while, Zhao Tailai withdrew his divine sense and landed beside Qin Feiyang. He said respectfully, Young master, I didn't find any trace of them, nor any trace of the space divine object. They shouldn't have come here yet. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the lake. But suddenly, Zhao Tailai said calmly, "Young master, in fact, I found a space divine object on the top of the mountain on the right side of the canyon." "Really?" Qin Feiyang asked secretly. On the surface, there was no reaction at all. Zhao Tailai said secretly, "I can be sure that it should be Mu Tianyang." "Very good. It's only fun when everyone is here. Since they all want it, then I'll fulfill their wish." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and drops of purple gold dragon blood continuously dripped into the lake. The purple gold dragon blood dissolved as soon as it entered the water. At first, the lake didn't have any reaction. It was as calm as ever. But as more and more purple gold dragon blood flowed into the lake, ripples gradually appeared on the surface of the lake. At the same time, on the top of the mountain, on the right side, in the void, inside the space divine object, Mu Tianyang stood with his hands behind his back. Mu Qing, Wang Yuanshan, the 4 divine marquises, and the emperor of the heavenly sun empire of the black tortoise world stood side by side behind Mu Tianyang. The few of them, including Mu Tianyang, were staring at the image in the void in front of them. The scene displayed in the image was the lake where Qin Feiyang was. "My lord, after waiting for so many years, this moment is finally here." Mu Qing couldn't hide the excitement on his face. "Yeah, I thought we would have to beg Qin Feiyang, but I didn't expect Zhuge Mingyang to have the same goal as us. The world is unpredictable, it's true." Mu Tianyang shook his head and smiled. One of the divine marquises didn't understand. "What are Zhuge Mingyang and the demon lord planning?" "I don't know. Back then, when Qin Batian sealed my second brother, I wasn't at the scene. After that, my second brother's remnant soul found me and told me that he was in trouble. By the time I rushed here, Qin Batian had already left. So I don't know what else Qin Batian did. However, the demon lord's plan is definitely not simple. When we get my second brother's divine body, don't hesitate and retreat immediately. If there's anything, wait until we leave the divine ruin." Mu Tianyang said. "Yes." Everyone replied respectfully. Mu Qing looked at Zhao Tailai on the screen and asked suspiciously, "My lord, do you think Zhao Tailai really didn't notice us?" "Do you think that's possible?" Mu Tianyang smiled. Mu Qing said, "Then why didn't he tell Zhuge Mingyang?" Mu Tianyang smiled. "It's not that he didn't want to tell Zhuge Mingyang. It's that Qin Feiyang didn't want him to tell Zhuge Mingyang." "Then why did Qin Feiyang do that?" Mu Qing frowned. "Don't you know Qin Feiyang? Do you think he'll let the demon lord go after threatening him?" Mu Tianyang sneered. "Is he trying to stir up trouble?" Mu Qing said, "That's right. The more people there are, the more chaotic the situation will be. And this is what Qin Feiyang wants. That's why I told you not to get entangled with them later. Qin Feiyang is no longer the young boy from back then. Once he gets the chance, we'll all be finished." Mu Tianyang said, "Humph, if it weren't for the fact that we need his help to open the seal here, he would have been a corpse." Mu Qing snorted through his nose. "You can't say that. The fact that he's still alive today is largely due to his own efforts. However, when I leave the miracle and return to the Mu family, I'll merge with my body, together with my second brother. Even 10 Qin Feiyang won't be our opponents." Mu Tianyang raised a corner of his mouth, and his eyes flashed with a piercing cold light. During the conversation, outside, the movement on the lake was getting louder and louder. The ripples that appeared at first had turned into waves, rolling in the lake. Splash! At last, the waves in the lake were more than 100 feet high, covering the sky and the earth. They slapped the shore of the lake, making a deafening sound. Boom! About 10 breaths later, suddenly, there was a loud, muffled sound in the turbulent lake. Following that, a terrifying aura set off 100 feet high wave, roaring out, "It's done! Zhuge Mingyang said as he stared at the surface of the lake. Qin Feiyang retracted his arm, and the power of the false god emerged, quickly healing the wound. Rumble. The aura was getting stronger and stronger. Even Qin Feiyang couldn't bear it. It felt like countless mountains were crashing down on him. Even the Grand Canyon began to shake violently. The ground gradually cracked. The surrounding mountains were also slowly collapsing. Retreat, Qin Feiyang said. Zhao Tailai immediately took Qin Feiyang to the sky. Zhuge Mingyang didn't dare to delay. He took Yan Wei and flew to Qin Feiyang and Zhao Tailai. Then the four of them lowered their heads and stared at the lake. Crack! Rumble! The movement was getting more and more intense. Suddenly, the mountains around the canyon all collapsed in an instant, directly burying the lake. Billowing dust and smoke rose in all directions. Zhuge Mingyang hurriedly waved his hand, and a gust of wind suddenly blew the dust and smoke that filled the void into the distance. The scene below was once again displayed in front of their eyes. The ground within a radius of thousands of miles was cracking. Abyssal cracks crazily spread to the end of the earth. And at the location of the lake, mud and gravel were constantly surging up. It seemed that something was crawling up from the ground. Time passed breath by breath. Suddenly, a huge head emerged from the mud. It was a human head, but it was not made of flesh and blood. It was carved out of stone. As the head kept coming out, Qin Feiyang's body suddenly trembled when he saw the face of the stone statue. Chapter 1731. The facial features of the stone statue were well defined. Its eyes were bright and full of spirit. It was like a pair of eyes that could see through everything and the origin of the world. Qin Feiyang would never be able to forget this face. The stone statue was still rising. His upper body and legs gradually appeared. That straight body was like an iron pine, holding a broken sword in his hand. Although it was just a stone statue, it could not hide the innate demeanor of a king. In a trance, everyone seemed to have seen the birth of an overlord of heaven and earth, and a deep sense of awe rose spontaneously in their hearts. This is the Qin Emperor who has never been seen before, Zhao Tailai murmured, although he had also stepped into the war god realm. The middle-aged man in front of him made him feel a sense of respect from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, Zhao Tailai looked down at the foot of the stone statue and exclaimed, "Young master, look at the foot of the stone statue!" Not only Qin Feiyang, Zhuge Mingyang, Yan Wei, and Mu Tianyang, who was standing in the space divine object, were all looking at the face of the stone statue at this moment. Hearing Zhao Tailai's words, everyone immediately lowered their heads and looked at the foot of the stone statue. At this moment, everyone's face was filled with shock. Under the feet of the stone statue, there were actually 2 stone coffins. Boom! The stone statue finally rose from the ground, completely. It was hundreds of feet high, like a huge mountain, and the invisible aura was overwhelming, making people breathless. He stood on the 2 stone coffins, as if he was using his body to suppress the thing in the coffins. Why are there 2 stone coffins? Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 stone coffins and murmured to himself. Logically speaking, even if the ancestor sealed Mu Tianjun in a stone coffin, there should only be 1 stone coffin. Who was sealed in the other stone coffin? And the shape and size of the 2 stone coffins were almost identical. How could this be? 2 stone coffins, which one is the second brother sealed in? At the same time, Mu Tianyang was also bewildered. However, Zhuge Mingyang was not surprised at all. Instead, he was very excited. "Don't worry, El. You will be able to break out of the seal very soon." He looked at the sarcophagus under the right foot of the stone statue. His hands were tightly clenched together as he muttered under his breath. Yan Wei glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and transmitted his voice. "Young master, look at Zhuge Mingyang's reaction." Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at Zhuge Mingyang and then at the sarcophagus that Zhuge Mingyang was staring at. A glint flashed across the depths of his eyes. It seemed that the sarcophagus at the foot of the ancestral statue was Zhuge Mingyang's target. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. "Old Zhao, get ready." "What is it?" Zhao Tai was suspicious. "The current situation is somewhat beyond my expectations. I originally thought that Zhuge Mingyang's target was also Mu Tianjuan's divine body. In this way, Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang will definitely fight in order to snatch Mu Tianjuan's divine body. But now, with the two sarcophagi in front of them, their targets are obviously different." Qin Feiyang thought to himself. "You mean they each take what they want, and it will be difficult for them to fight again?" Zhao Tai asked secretly. "Yes. When the seal is broken later, you must think of a way to make them fight. Even if we don't annihilate them, we must at least make them lose some soldiers here." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. "Okay," Zhao Tai replied secretly. Zhuge Mingyang suppressed the excitement in his heart and turned to Qin Feiyang with a smile. "Brother Qin, you can summon the fighting soul and the purple gold dragon Qi now to break the seal." Qin Feiyang asked, "You only need to summon the fighting soul and the purple gold dragon Qi?" Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand, and a grayish-white false god power broke through the air and blasted towards the stone statue. Buzz! Suddenly, a ray of purple-gold divine light appeared on the stone statue. Zhuge Mingyang's false god power was blocked by the purple-gold divine light and could not hit the stone statue. This purple-gold divine light is a layer of protective film that will block all attacks except for your fighting soul and the purple-gold dragon Qi. You only need to merge the fighting soul and the purple-gold dragon Qi into the stone statue's glabella, and the stone statue will collapse. When the stone statue collapses, the seal will be broken," Zhuge Mingyang said. "The purple-gold dragon blood will summon the seal, and the fighting soul and purple-gold dragon Qi will break the seal." Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly. His ancestor really knew how to play and made it so complicated. Roar! With a loud dragon roar, the purple-gold dragon's soul rushed out of his body. A mighty dragon force suddenly shrouded the area. Immediately after, Qin Feiyang raised his arm again, and wisps of purple-gold dragon Qi appeared on the tip of his index finger. "Quick!" Zhuge Mingyang urged impatiently. "Get ready!" In the space divine item, Mu Tianyang also shouted at the same time. The emperor said, "But we still don't know which stone coffin Heaven Lord Mu is sealed in." "The one on the left," Mu Tianyang said. "How do you know?" The emperor was surprised. "Zhuge Mingyang has been staring at the stone coffin on the right," Mu Tianyang said. "That's right. I noticed it too." Zhuge Mingyang's target is the stone coffin on the right. Then the divine body of heaven, Lord Mu, must be sealed in the stone coffin on the left. Get ready. Once the seal is broken, we will attack immediately. Mu Qing said. Wang Yuanshan, the four divine marquises, and the emperor looked at each other and immediately began to secretly prepare. Outside. Qin Feiyang stared at the stone statue's glabella and said, "Old Zhao, are you ready?" Zhao, Tai Lai replied secretly. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, and the purple-gold dragon Qi on his fingertip suddenly broke through the air. At the same time, the purple-gold dragon soul in the sky also let out a deafening dragon roar and rushed towards the stone statue's glabella. Swoosh! The purple-gold dragon Qi and the purple-gold dragon soul almost entered the stone statue's glabella at the same time. The purple-gold divine light on the stone statue did not stop them at all. Buzz! The stone statue's glabella immediately shone brightly. Crack! Immediately after, cracks, with the glabella as the center, quickly spread out in all directions. In less than 3 breaths, the cracks spread all over the stone statue like a spider web. Finally, Accompanied by a loud sound, the stone statue suddenly disintegrated, turning into pieces of gravel and falling down. It was also at this moment Zhuge Mingyang immediately sent Yan Wei into the spatial divine item and then took a step forward. With a mysterious step, he rushed towards the stone coffin on the right, like lightning. At the same time, Mu Tianyang appeared and also rushed towards the stone coffin on the left without saying a word. And, seeing Mu Tianyang suddenly charging out, Zhuge Mingyang's expression froze for a moment before he turned to look at Qin Feiyang. A trace of a sneer crept into his eyes. Obviously, he had already seen through Qin Feiyang's thoughts. However, he did not stop or pay attention to Mu Tianyang and continued to rush towards the stone coffins. However, just as the two of them were about to reach the stone coffins, a terrifying divine power roared out and blasted on the two stone coffins. With a loud bang, dust billowed and covered all directions. Caught off guard, Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang were also sent flying. After being blasted by the divine power, the two stone coffins did not shatter. The coffin lids did not open either. However, they flew up at the same time, alternating left and right in the void, passing through layers of dust and smoke, flying into the distance and smashing into a mountain range. The two stone coffins were originally exactly the same. After such a mess, it was impossible to tell which one was which. Damn it! Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang steadied themselves and looked at Zhao Tailai gloomily. That's right. It was Zhao Tailai who blasted the two stone coffins away. Why are you looking at me? Hurry up and find your stone coffins. Zhao Tailai laughed. Humph! Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang snorted coldly and turned into a stream of light, flying towards the mountain range. Looking at the back of the two, Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. Just blasting the two stone coffins away was not enough to make the two of them fight. Suddenly, an idea came to him and he pulled Tang Hai out. What's the matter? Tang Hai frowned. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the power of the false god condensed into an old figure in the void. It was the Imperial Preceptor. You disguise yourself as the Imperial Preceptor and go over immediately. Snatch the two stone coffins before Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang. Qin Feiyang said, and then Tang Hai asked. Qin Feiyang said, then it's up to you. Tang Hai said, we just need to get them to fight, right? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Understood. A cold light flashed in Tang Hai's eyes, and he immediately turned and flew into the void, silently flying over there. This guy, he didn't even disguise himself in front of us. Old Zhao, do you know what he looks like? Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously. I don't know. It can be said that no one in the entire Black Tortoise world has seen his true appearance. I'm also curious. Zhao Tailai said. Is it because he's too ugly and he's afraid of scaring us? It seems that we have to set up a trap and take off his mask to see what he looks like. Qin Feiyang laughed. Set up a trap? Zhao Tailai was a little speechless. Set up a trap just to see what Tang Hai looks like? That's a bit exaggerated. Qin Feiyang said. We'll talk about this later. Let's go and take a look first. Zhao Tailai immediately waved his hand, rolled up Qin Feiyang, and chased after Mu Tianyang and Tang Hai. After pondering for a while, Zhao Tailai said in a deep voice, Young master, if they really fight later, it may lead to an unprecedented divine battle. You have to be prepared in advance. Before entering the divine site, I was already prepared. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists, and a piercing cold light flashed in his eyes. Zhao Tailai took a deep look at Qin Feiyang. It seemed that he worried too much. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang seemed to have thought of something. He took out the rusty axe, handed it to Zhao Tailai, and said with a smile, This axe is for you. Don't be fooled by its appearance. In fact, it's a very terrifying divine weapon. I even have a hunch that it won't be worse than the dagger on Tang Hai. Thank you. Zhao Tailai took the axe, his expression full of gratitude. He had already seen how terrifying the axe was, so not only did he not underestimate it, he liked it very much. Back to Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang. At this moment, the two had already swept over the mountain range. Under the impact of the two stone coffins, the mountains and the earth within a radius of hundreds of miles were shattered. In the middle, there were two large pits that were hundreds of feet deep. Chapter 1732. Mu Tianyang asked, "Did you see clearly which sarcophagus is yours?" "Zhao, Tai Lai attacked too suddenly, I didn't notice at all." Zhuge Mingyang shook his head. Mu Tianyang said, "Then let's each choose one and open the sarcophagus to confirm. If it's not yours, we'll exchange immediately." "Deal, but don't play any tricks." Zhuge Mingyang said, "Don't worry, we're just taking what we need." Mu Tianyang said and rushed towards one of the sarcophagus. But at this moment, a white-haired old man appeared and rushed towards the sarcophagus like lightning. Imperial Preceptor. Mu Tianyang saw the old man and was immediately furious. "Ancestor." Zhuge Mingyang's face was filled with joy. "Mu Tianyang, don't think about getting any of these two sarcophagi." The Imperial Preceptor sneered and rushed to the front of the sarcophagus. With a wave of his old hand, the sarcophagus disappeared immediately. Then, he flew towards the other sarcophagus. "You're courting death." Mu Tianyang was furious and rushed towards Zhuge Mingyang. "Mu Tianyang, what are you doing?" Zhuge Mingyang was shocked and shouted, "You started it first." Mu Tianyang roared and threw a punch at Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang's face darkened and he threw out a palm. The power of the false god rolled out. Boom! The fist and the palm met in an instant. Both of them were sent flying at the same time. Zhuge Mingyang spat out blood. Mu Tianyang's divine sense body was also on the verge of collapse. Although Zhuge Mingyang's false god power had an innate advantage, Mu Tianyang was about to condense his divine soul. As a war god, his strength was naturally not comparable to an ordinary false god. The battle prowess of the two could be considered to be evenly matched. Zhuge Mingyang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and raised his head to look at Mu Tianyang. He frowned and said, "I didn't know Ancestor was nearby." It was also at this moment. The Imperial Tutor put away the other sarcophagus. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang and shouted, "This old man has already become a war god. Why should I be afraid of him?" "That's true." Zhuge Mingyang was stunned for a moment before he nodded and smiled. Good, good, good. You guys are amazing." Mu Tianyang was so angry that he laughed. Wang Yuan Shan, the four divine overlords, and the emperor appeared beside him in an instant. Mu Tianyang turned to look at the Black Tortoise World's Heavenly Sun Empire's Emperor Lord and said, "Mu Nanfeng, I'll leave the Imperial Preceptor to you. You must snatch my second brother's divine body back." "Leave it to me." Mu Nanfeng nodded. "The rest of you, follow me to take down Zhuge Mingyang." Mu Tianyang roared again. "Yes." Wang Yuan Shan and the others replied respectfully. They then followed Mu Tianyang and charged towards Zhuge Mingyang. At the same time, Mu Nanfeng looked at the Imperial Preceptor with murderous intent in his eyes and said, "You're not the only one who has become a war god." "Is that so?" The Imperial Preceptor sneered. Boom! The Emperor Lord's body shook and a terrifying divine aura exploded. It was a pure divine aura. He really is a war god. The Imperial Preceptor was surprised. Zhuge Fengtian raised his eyebrows and reminded, "Ancestor, be careful. He's the Emperor Lord of the Black Tortoise World's Heavenly Sun Empire. Don't underestimate him." "What kind of place is the Black Tortoise World?" The Imperial Preceptor was stunned and asked suspiciously. "Now's not the time to talk about this," Zhuge Mingyang said. He then turned and looked at Mu Tianyang and the others. "All right, tell me slowly after we've taken care of them." With that, the imperial preceptor shouted, Qin Feiyang is still behind us. Don't waste any time and end this quickly. Yes. Zhuge Mingyang nodded and raised his head to look at Mu Tianyang and the others. He smiled and said, What a bunch of reckless fools! Roar! A huge bone dragon soared into the sky. Innate divine ability activated instantly. The cultivation of Wang Yuanshan and the others immediately plummeted. Peak Realm 9 Star War Emperor. 9 Star War Emperor. 8 Star War Emperor. 7 Star War Emperor. What? The few of them turned pale with fright. Without any hesitation, they immediately turned around and fled. If their cultivation was the same, even though Zhuge Mingyang's false god power had an innate advantage, they were confident in fighting. However, their cultivation was directly suppressed to 7 Star War Emperor. There was no way they could continue fighting. Even Mu Tianyang had no choice but to retreat. Zhuge Mingyang looked at the 4 divine overlords and sneered. Divine overlords, right? I'll kill you first. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and landed behind one of the divine overlords. With a slap, the grayish-white, false god power gushed out, containing a destructive aura. Without any power to fight back, the divine overlord's body was torn into pieces on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere. Yeah, he got rid of one so quickly. At this time, Qin Feiyang and Zhao Tailai, who had rushed over, were surprised when they saw the scene. This speed was somewhat beyond imagination. War God's aura? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He turned to look at Mu Nanfeng and said in surprise, He has actually broken through to the War God realm. That's not strange. In the Black Tortoise realm, his cultivation had already reached stage 10. After the Devil imprint is removed, he will naturally break through to the War God realm like me. Zhao Tailai said. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and said with a smile, I almost forgot about this person. Then, he looked at Wang Yuanshan again, the murderous intent in his eyes undisguised. Oh no, Qin Feiyang is here too. Wang Yuanshan felt a shocking murderous intent. When he turned his head and saw Qin Feiyang not far away, his expression changed drastically. Zhuge Mingyang was about to kill another divine overlord, but when he heard Wang Yuanshan's words, he frowned and shouted, Ancestor, let's retreat first. The Imperial Grandmaster immediately looked at Qin Feiyang with murderous intent in his eyes. Boom! At the same time, a shocking sharpness rushed out of Mu Tianyang's body. He stared at Zhuge Mingyang with a sinister gaze and said, You killed this monarch's men. And you still want to withdraw just like that? Do you think that's possible? Zhuge Mingyang said angrily, If we continue fighting like this, it will only benefit Qin Feiyang. He might not be able to take advantage of us. Mu Tianyang waved his hand, and the blood blade immediately appeared. The sharpness tore the sky and split the earth. At the same time, it carried a nauseating stench. Heaven-defying divine artifact. Zhuge Mingyang's pupils constricted. Qin Feiyang glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang, then glanced at the Imperial Grandmaster and laughed. This old Tang did well. For Tang Hai, this is a piece of cake. Zhao Tailai thought. That's right. The Imperial Grandmaster in front of everyone was not the real Imperial Grandmaster, but Tang Hai. Wake up! Mu Tianyang let out a furious roar. His divine sense rushed into the blood blade. Clang! The blood blade vibrated in the air as its divine power rushed towards Zhuge Mingyang's divine ability. Kacha! All of a sudden, accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, Zhuge Mingyang's divine ability finally collapsed. Among the 3 divine overlords, Wang Yuanshan's cultivation was restored to the false god realm. Kill! The 4 divine overlords roared as they used their strongest divine arts and charged towards Zhuge Mingyang with a murderous aura. Zhuge Mingyang frowned. The bone dragon fighting soul swooped down and crashed into the 4 great divine arts. Rumble! Kacha! The mountains and the earth shattered and sank. The four divine arts exploded in the air as a destructive aura roared in all directions. Zhuge Mingyang's fighting soul was also shattered at the same time. He retreated as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and his face turned pale. However, before he could stabilize himself, the blood blade shattered the sky and charged towards him. Zhuge Mingyang quickly dodged to the side. The blood blade swept past his face, leaving a deep cut on his face. "How dare you hurt me?" Zhuge Mingyang touched the wound on his face and looked at the blood on his fingertips. A terrifying aura gradually emerged. "This is unforgivable." Suddenly, he raised his head and stared at Mu Tianyang as he said word by word, "I will make you pay." 6 words killing art, sever word art. Zhuge Mingyang roared as he waved his hand. A shocking light swept out and slashed towards Mu Tianyang as though it had teleported. Mu Tianyang's divine sense body was immediately split into 2, and a few hundred strands of divine sense were destroyed by the light. 6 words killing art. What kind of divine art is this? Even the demon ancestor did not have such a divine art. Mu Tianyang was shocked. The power of the sever word art had already surpassed that of a high-grade divine art. He quickly looked at Wang Yuanshan and the other 3 and shouted, "Come over immediately and revive the blood blade with me." The 4 of them quickly rushed to Mu Tianyang's side. The blood blade also streaked across the sky and floated above Mu Tianyang's head. Wang Yuanshan and the other 3 looked at each other as their false god power surged out and entered the blood blade. With the addition of Wang Yuanshan and the other 3, the sharpness of the blood blade became more and more terrifying. Zhao Tailai glanced at Wang Yuanshan and said, "Young master, it seems that Wang Yuanshan is indeed under Mu Tianyang's control." "There's no doubt about it," Qin Feiyong said. Zhao Tailai asked, "Then what should we do now?" Qin Feiyong transmitted his voice, "Go kill Tang Hai." "Kill Tang Hai?" Zhao Tailai was stunned. "Pretend to kill Tang Hai and let the Imperial Emperor be careless. Then give him a fatal blow. We can spare Mu Tianyang, but this person must die." Qin Feiyong thought, "Why must we kill Mu Nanfeng?" Zhao Tailai was puzzled. Compared to Mu Nanfeng, Mu Tianyang was a bigger threat. "So his name is Mu Nanfeng. Mu Tianyang has a heaven-defying divine artifact. It's not that easy to kill him, but Mu Nanfeng is easy to deal with. However, Mu Nanfeng is a god of war after all. If we don't get rid of him now, he and Mu Tianyang will definitely cause us a lot of trouble when they return to the Great Qin." Qin Feiyong thought, "I see." Zhao Tailai nodded his head in realization. Swoosh! In the next moment, he teleported and rushed toward Mu Nanfeng and Tang Hai. "Ancestor, be careful! Mu Nanfeng, be careful!" Seeing this, Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang's expressions changed. They hurriedly reminded Mu Nanfeng and Tang Hai, their eyes fixed on Zhao Tailai. Mu Nanfeng and Tang Hai were also quite nervous at this moment, because Zhao Tailai's participation would break the balance here. Of course, Tang Hai was just pretending. Very soon, Zhao Tailai rushed to Mu Nanfeng's side. Mu Nanfeng thought that Zhao Tailai would attack him first and was ready to fight back. However, Zhao Tailai brushed past him without looking back and shouted, "Come with me to kill the Imperial Tutor." Mu Nanfeng was stunned and was immediately overjoyed. He immediately teleported and followed behind Zhao Tailai, charging toward the Imperial Tutor with murderous intent. However, he did not let down his guard against Zhao Tailai, because the Tianyang Empire and Qin Feiyong did not form an alliance. In such a situation, there could be changes at any time. Chapter 1733. What do you mean? Tang Hai was stunned. Zhao Tailai, this bastard actually attacked him? Tang Hai quickly began to retreat and transmitted his voice. Bastard, it's me! I know it's you, Zhao Tailai secretly said. Then why did you kill me? Tang Hai said angrily. Zhao Tailai's eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule as he secretly said, This is the young master's order. I can only obey. What? The young master asked you to kill me? Tang Hai was furious. That's right. Zhao Tailai transmitted his voice. Tang Hai glanced at Qin Feiyong in the distance and secretly said angrily, Why? Did I do something wrong? The young master said that you're a little unreliable. I think what the young master said makes sense. A guy who doesn't dare to show his true face is definitely not a good person. Zhao Tailai said, What the hell? Just because of this? Tang Hai was very depressed. Yes, don't make a futile struggle. You know what the young master is capable of. If he wants to kill you, it's useless even if you hide in the sky. Zhao Tailai secretly said, Bastard, since you're heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. I'll immediately tell Zhuge Mingyang and the others my identity. Tang Hai said angrily. Oh no, this is too much. Zhao Tailai's heart trembled as he hurriedly said, Don't be impulsive, I'm just joking with you. Why don't you think the young master will kill you for this reason? Joking? Tang Hai was stunned and immediately flew into a rage. He secretly shouted, Is this the time to joke? Instead of retreating, he rushed toward Zhao Tailai. Don't use your divine power. Zhuge Mingyang knows the state preceptor well. If he sees that your divine power is different from the state preceptor, he will definitely find out that you're an imposter. Zhao Tailai hurriedly said, Nonsense. Do I need you to remind me of such a simple thing? What's the young master's plan? Tang Hai was furious and threw a punch at Zhao Tailai. Kill Mu Nanfeng. Kill him in one blow. Zhao Tailai thought to himself as he threw a punch at Tang Hai with all his might. He did not use any divine power, but their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Those who didn't know would really think that they had some kind of blood feud. Boom! The two fists collided. Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time and were sent flying. Zhao Tailai shouted, This is your chance. Mu Nanfeng, quick! I don't need you to remind me. I know. A cold light flickered in Mu Nanfeng's eyes as he teleported in front of Tang Hai and slammed his palm onto Tang Hai's chest. His quasi-divinity force surged as he roared, Go to hell! After Zhao Tai stabilized his body, he immediately rushed over murderously. Mu Nanfeng thought that Zhao Tailai was going to help kill Tang Hai and let his guard down slightly. This was exactly what Zhao Tailai wanted. Just as Mu Nanfeng's palm landed on Tang Hai's chest, Zhao Tailai arrived beside Mu Nanfeng. The rusty axe appeared in an instant. He grabbed the axe and looked directly at Mu Nanfeng's head. A deadly sense of danger engulfed Mu Nanfeng. Immediately, he sensed that something was wrong, but it was too late for him to realize it now. The axe fell. Although it was rusty, its edge was extremely terrifying. Ah! Accompanied by a terrified scream, Mu Nanfeng's head was chopped off on the spot. Blood spurted out a few meters away and dyed the void red. His target is actually Mu Nanfeng, Mu Tianyang, Wang Yuanshan. The three divine marquises and Zhuge Mingyang were dumbfounded when they saw this unforeseen event. At first, they all thought that Zhao Tailai's target was the national master. However, they never thought that this was just a show put on by Zhao Tailai. Well done, Qin Feiyong murmured. Zhao Tailai looked at Mu Nanfeng, who had fallen down, and was in a daze at this moment. I actually killed a god of war. Although he was the one who chopped off Mu Nanfeng's head, he still couldn't get used to the scene, because this was the first time in his life that he had killed a god of war. Tang Hai glanced at Mu Nanfeng's body and looked at Zhao Tailai. He transmitted his voice. Does it feel good? Good, very good. This is a completely different feeling from killing a false god Zhongxian said. Zhao, Tai Lai secretly said. His arm that was holding the axe was trembling. This wasn't fear. It was excitement. Enjoy it well. After all, when you kill more in the future, you won't feel this way anymore. Tang Hai whispered to Zhao Tai as he rushed towards Zhao Tai Lai aggressively. Still want to fight? Zhao Tai Lai was stunned. Tang Hai secretly said, Of course, I have to put on a show. Bang, bang, bang. The two immediately engaged in a fierce battle in the void. However, although it looked fierce, the two of them didn't suffer any fatal injuries. Qin Feiyang, you damn bastard. What good will it do you to kill Mu Nanfeng? At this moment, Mu Tianyang also came back to his senses and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. No matter what, the state preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang are also people of the great Qin. If I want to deal with someone, I will definitely deal with you first. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Brother Qin is indeed a reasonable person. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed behind Mu Tianyang. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said, I will hold Mu Tianyang back. You take care of the 3 divine marquises and Wang Yuanshan. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at Wang Yuanshan and the other 3 and sneered. As long as we don't have that heaven-defying divine artifact, killing them is as easy as killing dogs. But before that, can you ask Zhao Tai Lai to stop? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What do you mean? Don't you know that with our strength, it is impossible to kill Mu Tianyang? Zhuge Mingyang said angrily. Of course I know. Qin Feiyang said. Then why are you doing this? If Zhao Tai Lai stops fighting with the ancestor and comes over to help us, then even if Mu Tianyang hides in a divine artifact, we can still easily take care of him. Zhuge Mingyang shouted. Do you think I don't know what your ancestor is like? If he really comes over, he might stab me in the back. So for safety reasons, let Zhao Tai Lai play with him over there. Qin Feiyang sneered and waved his hand. The ancient castle appeared. Boom! The power of the 3 false gods surged out, and the ancient castle immediately released a world-destroying might. He didn't waste any more words with Zhuge Mingyang. He grabbed the ancient castle and threw it at the blood blade. Bastard! Zhuge Mingyang cursed, and also looked at Wang Yuanshan and the other 3. Qin Feiyang, you forced me to do this. Mu Tianyang laughed angrily. He controlled the blood blade and fearlessly chopped towards the ancient castle. He then shouted at Wang Yuanshan and the other 3, The 4 of you, no matter what method you use, you must kill Zhuge Mingyang for me. What? The 4 of them turned pale. They thought that Mu Tianyang would choose to retreat in the face of Zhuge Mingyang and Qin Feiyang. Even if he didn't retreat, he would send them to a divine artifact first. After all, they were no match for Zhuge Mingyang. However, they didn't expect that not only did Mu Tianyang not do that, but he also asked them to kill Zhuge Mingyang. What was the difference between this and asking them to die? They also felt aggrieved. No matter what, they were veteran semi-divinities, yet they were actually so fearful of a junior. Mu Tianyang glanced at the 4 and said word by word, Kill him even if you have to self-destruct. Self-destruct. The 4 of them trembled. You don't want to go? Then I'll cripple you now. Anyway, you're just a bunch of trash. I don't need you. Mu Tianyang's face became extremely ferocious. The 4 of them suddenly trembled and shouted, Zhuge Mingyang, come with us if you have the guts. The 4 of them immediately ran away. A bunch of trash. How dare you shout at me? Zhuge Mingyang calmly chased after them, his face full of disdain. Wang Yuanshan looked back at Zhuge Mingyang and said, 3 divine overlords, do you have any ideas? Zhuge Mingyang's false god power is strange, but we can resist it if we work together. The only thing we're worried about is his war soul. Yeah, his war soul's talent is too terrifying. Once it engulfs us, we'll definitely die. The three divine overlords said, their eyes full of wariness. Wang Yuanshan said, "But Mu Tianyang said that we have to kill him." "There's only one way," one of the divine overlords said. "What way?" The three of them turned to look at him. The deity overlord said, "Although Zhuge Mingyang's innate divine ability is terrifying, it is limited by distance. As long as we don't fight him in close combat and maintain a certain distance, his innate divine ability will not affect us." Wang Yuanshan's eyes lit up and said, "That's right. Use a divine art to wear him down. Our cultivation isn't any weaker than his. We can wear him down." "Let's do that." The three divine overlords nodded. In the blink of an eye, clang! The ancient castle and the blood blade, the two heaven-defying divine artifacts, finally clashed. The moment they met, dazzling sparks burst out. The destructive aura was earth-shattering, shattering the void for thousands of miles. Fortunately, Wang Yuanshan and the other three had foresight and didn't fight with Zhuge Mingyang. Otherwise, the aura alone would have been enough to injure them. Young Master and Mu Tianyang are finally going to fight. Zhao Tailai turned to look at Qin Feiyang and murmured, "Don't look over there. Your opponent is me." Tang Hai raised his eyebrows. "Opponent? We're just putting on an act." Zhao Tailai rolled his eyes. "Although it's just an act, I'd like to see which of us is the young master's #1 warrior?" Tang Hai said, "What do you mean? You really want to fight with me?" Zhao Tailai was stunned and frowned. "You don't dare?" Tang Hai looked at him provocatively. What a joke. In this world, is there anything that I, Zhao Tailai, don't dare to do? But before we fight, can I ask you a question? Zhao Tailai thought. What question? Tang Hai was suspicious. Zhao Tailai said, "Is it really like what the young master said? Is it because you're too ugly that you don't dare to show your true face?" "I'm ugly?" Tang Hai was stunned and said, "Are you sure this is what the young master said?" "Yes, that's what the young master guessed." Zhao Tailai chuckled. "How boring." Tang Hai snorted and stared at Zhao Tailai, saying, "Cut the crap, come on." "For the title of the #1 warrior, I won't lose to you." Zhao Tailai smiled proudly. Bang! Bang! The two of them continued to collide in the void, causing the void to collapse and even the heavens and earth to lose their color. Looking at the situation, they weren't putting on an act. The power contained in each of their punches was enough to seriously injure the other party. Although they didn't use the false god's power, divine skills, or fighting souls, their battle was more exciting than the battle between Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang. Chapter 1734. On the other side, the battle between Zhuge Mingyang and Wang Yuanshan and the other three had also begun. As planned, the four of them had been keeping a safe distance from Zhuge Mingyang. When Zhuge Mingyang advanced, they retreated. When Zhuge Mingyang retreated, they advanced. They used their divine arts and fighting souls to fight a war of attrition with Zhuge Mingyang. Don't say. This method of fighting was quite effective. Zhuge Mingyang had been in a passive state of defense. Although his divine powers could also weaken the power of his divine arts and fighting souls, he did not dare to use them casually in a war of attrition, because the divine powers came from the fighting souls. The fighting souls could not be used for a long time and would eventually be exhausted. The same went for the divine powers. Therefore, he had to save them for the critical moment. As a result, Zhuge Mingyang was in a very sullen situation. He had the ability to kill the four of them in seconds, but he had to slowly wear them down. Clang! Clang! The battle between Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang had also reached its climax. The two heaven-defying artifacts collided with each other under the control of the two. The mountains and rivers shattered, and the earth sank. Mu Tianyang was really angry. Mu Tianjuan's divine body was stolen. A divine lord was killed. Mu Nanfeng, the god of war, was also killed by Zhao Tailai. It was a heavy loss. In fact, Mu Tianyang could have escaped, but his pride did not allow him to do so. Moreover, Mu Tianjuan's divine body was still in Tang Hai's hands. In other words, even if he wanted to escape, he had to take back Mu Tianjuan's divine body first. As the power of the false god and divine sense kept pouring in, the power of the two divine weapons became more and more terrifying. Mu Tianyang sneered. You're just a false god. It's too difficult for you to recover the divine weapons. Even if you have 3 kinds of false god power, you can't defeat me. Give up. Your situation is worse than mine. Even if the quasi-divinity energy is exhausted, it can still recover in a short period of time. As for the divine sense you've consumed, if you want to recover, ha! Qin Feiyang grinned. The meaning behind his words was obvious. He was not afraid of wasting time. Mu Tianyang's heart sank. This was exactly what he was thinking about. It was easy for him to recover his quasi-divinity energy, but it would take him a very long time to gather even a sliver of his spiritual perception. He couldn't afford to waste time, but now he had no other choice. If he didn't take back Mu Tianjun's divine body, he would definitely be killed by the Grand Tutor. In fact, he had never wanted to confront Qin Feiyang head-on, because Qin Feiyang also had a heaven-defying divine artifact. If they really fought, it would definitely be a situation where both sides would suffer. That was why he had planned to snatch Mu Tianjuan's divine body and retreat immediately. However, he never expected that the Imperial Tutor would appear midway. What was even more unexpected was that Qin Feiyang would actually team up with Zhuge Mingyang. Such a situation was extremely unfavorable for him, and to reverse this situation, the only way was to break the alliance between Qin Feiyang and Zhuge Mingyang. But how could he break the alliance between the two of them? Right. The Fiend Ancestor. This person is the best fuse. Mu Tianyang's eyes lit up. While controlling the bloody blade to fight with the castle, he said, How much do you know about the Fiend Ancestor? Qin Feiyang was startled and thought, I've only heard rumors about him. Then do you know how he died? Mu Tianyang asked. It said that he was killed by a trap set by 2 gods of war. Qin Feiyang frowned slightly. He couldn't figure out why Mu Tianyang suddenly mentioned the Fiend Ancestor. Then do you know who those 2 gods of war are? Mu Tianyang asked again. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Mu Tianyang said, I'll tell you now, those 2 gods of war are my ancestor and your ancestor. What? Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled. This answer was simply too surprising. The Fiend Ancestor was actually killed by the ancestor, and Mu Tianyang? Back then, when my Tianyang Empire ruled the mountains and rivers and was at the peak of its glory, the Fiend Ancestor suddenly appeared. At that time, he stirred up trouble and committed all kinds of crimes, killing countless living beings. As the Emperor of the Tianyang Empire at that time, I naturally couldn't stand by and do nothing. After finding the Fiend Ancestor's lair, I immediately led dozens of Marshal Marquis of the Tianyang Empire and charged into the Fiend Ancestor's lair. But at this point, between Mu Tianyang's brows crawled up a painful expression. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, The Fiend Ancestor's lair is in the Sea of Reincarnation. That's right. His lair is in the deepest part of the Sea of Reincarnation. At that time, the dozens of Marshal Marquis that I brought were all pseudo-god level existences. Originally, I was full of confidence and thought that with this strength, I would definitely be able to get rid of the Fiend Ancestor. But when the battle broke out, I realized that I was too wrong. The strength of the Fiend Ancestor and the Demon Dragon was simply beyond imagination. Dozens of Marshal Marquis were instantly annihilated. Not a single one was left. At that time, I had already stepped into the War God realm, but in the end, I was still able to escape with the help of the Blood Blade. Mu Tianyang said in a deep voice, So strong. Qin Feiyang's mind trembled. Even Mu Tianyang, who possessed a heaven-defying divine artifact and had already stepped into the war god realm, could only escape? Qin Feiyang asked. Then what about my ancestor at that time? At that time, your ancestor had already risen, and his strength was on par with mine. But at that time, the war between him and me had yet to completely erupt. That time when I failed to eliminate the fiend ancestor, I fled from the sea of reincarnation. But because the losses were too heavy, many elders and ministers in the imperial court were quite dissatisfied with me, and the foundation of the heaven and earth empire slowly began to shake. It was also at that time that I thought of your ancestor. To be honest, at that time, your ancestor and I were just like you and Mu Qing in the past. Mu Tianyang said. Me and Mu Qing? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Yes, both enemies and friends. I clearly remember that when I found your ancestor and told him about the fiend ancestor situation, he didn't say anything and joined forces with me to enter the sea of reincarnation. At that time, my second brother, Mu Tianjun, also went with us. Mu Tianyang said, This is not beyond my expectations. With my ancestor's personality, he definitely wouldn't sit back and do nothing. Qin Feiyang said, Yes, your ancestor is the person I hate the most in my life, but also the person I admire the most. Mu Tianyang sighed deeply and said, Your ancestor, my second brother, and I entered the sea of reincarnation. After some discussion, we set up a killing trap. What kind of killing trap? Qin Feiyang asked. Clang! The bloody blade and the ancient castle were still fighting, and the sky was falling and the earth was cracking, as if doomsday had arrived. Mu Tianyang looked up at the bloody blade, as if he was immersed in his memories. After a long while, he transmitted his voice. My second brother is the core of this assassination plot. Mu Tianjun? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. The first step was for my second brother to lure away the fiend ancestor's mount, the fiend dragon, because the fiend dragon's strength was almost on par with the fiend ancestor. If we didn't separate them, we wouldn't have any hope of killing the fiend ancestor. At that time, my second brother's cultivation was about the same as mine and your ancestors, but the fatal thing was that he didn't have a heaven-defying divine artifact. You can imagine how dangerous my second brother's situation was at that time. However, when your ancestor and I proposed this plan, my second brother didn't say much. In the end, he succeeded in luring the fiend dragon away, giving your ancestor and I enough time to kill the fiend ancestor, even though we had to pay a great price for it. To be honest, my second brother was the real hero at that time. Mu Tianyang sighed. What price? Qin Feiyang asked. Mu Tianyang said, His divine soul was almost destroyed, and in the end he had to use his flame of life to save his life. Qin Feiyang said, In terms of that battle, your second brother is indeed admirable. Yes. Without the fiend dragon, the pressure on your ancestor and I was a lot less. At that time, your ancestor and I each had a heaven-defying divine artifact. You might think that with 2 heaven-defying divine artifacts, wouldn't it be easy to kill the fiend ancestor? Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang nodded. He knew the power of a heaven-defying divine artifact better than anyone. For example, although he was only a false god with the Chang Shui and the castle, he could fight against the god of war and not be at a disadvantage. Your ancestor, and I thought so too. We would definitely get rid of the fiend ancestor quickly, but in fact it was the opposite. The fiend ancestor also had a heaven-defying divine artifact. Your ancestor and I fought with him for a few days and nights in the reincarnation ocean. In the end, we were almost exhausted and finally crushed the fiend ancestor's divine soul. Mu Tianyang sighed. What? He also had a heaven-defying divine artifact. Qin Feiyang was shocked. That's right. I remember that his heaven-defying divine artifact was a snowflake. and like my blood blade, it emitted a pungent stench. Mu Tianyang said. Snowflake? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes. When your ancestor and I saw that snowflake, we were also very surprised. How could a snowflake be a heaven-defying divine artifact? But in fact, it is a heaven-defying divine artifact. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, speaking of which, what's with the stench of your blood blade? Mu Tianyang's mouth twitched and said with a wry smile, it's funny. You definitely won't believe it. What? Qin Feiyang became more and more curious. Mu Tianyang said, I found it in a cesspool. What the hell? Cesspool. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Are you kidding? How could a heaven-defying divine artifact be in a cesspool? I told you. You definitely won't believe it. But this is absolutely true. I remember at that time it was sealed in that cesspool. After so many years, the stench still hasn't dissipated. I don't know how many years it has been sealed. To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that it's a heaven-defying divine artifact, I wouldn't want to keep it by my side. Mu Tianyang said helplessly. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. He raised his head and looked at the blood blade. He couldn't help but want to laugh. A heaven-defying divine artifact was actually sealed in a cesspool. This was more than funny. But then again, who was so wicked? One had to know. Chapter 1735. Achoo! The third floor of the miracle. In an ancient palace, a sneeze suddenly sounded. Inside the hall, a divine dragon was lying on the ground. It was only a meter long, and its entire body seemed to be condensed from ice. Its entire body was filled with a bone-piercing chill. That's right, this was an ice dragon. The ice dragon grabbed its claws, rubbed its nose, and muttered, Who is scolding this emperor behind my back? Then it turned its head to the side and saw a golden small beast napping on the ground. Beside the small beast was a dagger. It was as white as jade and extremely beautiful. The ice dragon stood up and walked to the small beast's side. It grabbed the dagger and waved it a few times. It chuckled and said, This Chang Shui is indeed worthy of being a divine artifact refined by little Wu Tian. Little Wu Tian. The golden small beast opened its eyes, raised its head, and glanced at the ice dragon. You actually dare to call him little Wu Tian. You're getting bolder and bolder. The ice dragon chuckled. Boss Frog, if you don't say it, who will know? But then again, are we going to keep sleeping here? It's so boring. Grandpa Frog didn't ask you to come. If you're bored, then scram. The golden small beast said. Boss Frog, you're too cold. The ice dragon looked at it aggrievedly. The golden small beast rolled its eyes and said suspiciously, Grandpa Frog is puzzled. Why did you come here for no reason? Isn't it because I miss you? The ice dragon said. TSK. Grandpa Frog saw that you were bored, so I wanted to have some fun. The golden small beast said. Boss Frog knows me best. The ice dragon chuckled, then said unhappily, I originally came here to have fun, but when I came here, I just slept with you all day. That's too boring. The golden small beast yawned and said, I'm old. Why don't I sleep? Old? The ice dragon rolled its eyes at the small beast. It lowered its head and looked at the Chang Shui on its claws, its eyes shining. The golden small beast said, Stop looking. That's not something you can have. Why? Ice dragon was confused. The golden small beast said angrily, Nonsense. Haven't you noticed that it has an owner? It has an owner? Ice dragon was stunned for a moment. His telepathic thoughts entered Chang Shui, and he said in surprise, It really does have an owner. Who is its owner? The golden small beast said impatiently, Why do you talk so much nonsense? Isn't it annoying? Just tell me, Ice dragon said with a flattering smile. You know its owner. The small beast said, I know him. Ice dragon was startled. Then he asked in surprise, "Who is it?" "He's not a big shot," the small beast said. "If he's not a big shot, how could he have a divine weapon refined by little Wutian?" Ice Dragon was suspicious. The golden small beast said angrily, "Can you be quiet and let Uncle Frog have a good sleep?" "Sleep for what? When you die in the future, you'll have plenty of time to sleep. Now tell me," Ice Dragon urged. "Yeah, you're getting bolder and bolder. You actually dare to curse Uncle Frog?" The golden small beast suddenly got up and looked at Ice Dragon with bad intentions. Don't. A gentleman uses his mouth and not his fists." Ice Dragon quickly retreated. He kept waving his claws in panic, his eyes full of fear. Hee, we've known each other for so many years. When have you ever seen Uncle Frog being a gentleman?" The golden small beast smirked. Ice Dragon's body stiffened. That's right. This bastard small beast in front of him had always been the representative of shamelessness. Gentleman? It had nothing to do with him at all. And, suddenly, the golden small beast was stunned. He lowered his head and his eyes flickered. "What's the situation?" Ice Dragon looked at the small beast suspiciously. The golden small beast suddenly grinned and looked up at Ice Dragon, saying, "Don't you want to have fun? Uncle Frog will take you there now. But let me say it in advance. Without Uncle Frog's permission, you are not allowed to make a move, and you are not allowed to expose your whereabouts." Okay. Ice Dragon nodded repeatedly. The golden small beast took back the Chang Shui and disappeared with Ice Dragon. The second floor of the Miracle, the three battlefields were separated. Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai were fighting for the title of the #1 general. Their bodies were dripping with blood. Zhuge Mingyang and Wang Yuanshan's group of 4 were fighting for life and death. The situation of the battle was also beyond imagination. Wang Yuanshan's group of 4 were unscathed. Instead, it was Zhuge Mingyang who was covered in wounds and had been suppressed. The confrontation between the Blood Blade and the ancient castle had never stopped. The power of the 2 heaven-defying divine artifacts annihilated in all directions, causing the world to become incomparably dark. But Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang did not make a move. The 2 stood facing each other, looking at each other. Their clothes fluttered in the wind. At first glance, they looked like 2 old friends who were reminiscing about the past. Qin Feiyang said, "You guys destroyed the divine soul of the demon ancestor." "Yes. At that time, your ancestor and I both thought that the demon ancestor's soul had dissipated. But when I turned into Lu Xingqian and entered the imperial capital, I inadvertently found out that when that heaven-defying divine artifact escaped, it took away a wisp of the demon ancestor's soul when we were not paying attention." Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice. "You already found out when you were in the imperial capital." Qin Feiyang frowned. "Yes." Mu Tianyang nodded. "Why didn't you tell me?" Qin Feiyang said. "Because you were still very weak at that time. It was useless to tell you. And I never thought that I would join forces with you to deal with the demon ancestor one day." Mu Tianyang said. "I see. Your original plan was to kill me after I helped you save Mu Tianjuan's divine body." Qin Feiyang sneered. "That's right. I'll kill you after I save my brother. If you die, the demon ancestor's matter will have nothing to do with you, so there's no need to tell you. But your growth is far beyond my imagination. Not only are you powerful, but you also have so many overlords around you. Now, I have to tell you these things and ask for your cooperation. You know how powerful the demon ancestor is now. If we don't cooperate, I dare say that we will die in his hands sooner or later." Mu Tianyang said solemnly. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, "Let's put the cooperation aside first. I want to know everything about you and my ancestor." "All right. After the demon ancestor died, the demon dragon came out to stir up trouble again. Your ancestor and I joined forces to kill it and sealed its body in various places. Mu Tianyang said, "Why didn't you kill it completely? Why did you seal it instead?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "It's all because of your ancestor." Mu Tianyang was a little angry. "My ancestor?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "That's right. At that time I suggested to destroy the demon dragon's body and let its divine body be destroyed, but your ancestor said that the heavens are virtuous and wanted to seal it. In the situation at that time, I couldn't refute him, so I followed his wishes. It's only now that I understand that he did this for you." Mu Tianyang snorted. "For me?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Mu Tianyang said, "Isn't the demon dragon's heart in your hands right now?" "HM," Qin Feiyang nodded. Mu Tianyang said, "Then, do you know what benefits there will be if you fuse with these things?" "Fuse?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes. For example, Yu Huang, Black Dragon Snake, Phantom Snake Emperor, etc. If they were to fuse with the demon dragon's heart, they would immediately be reborn. Their strength would increase by several times." Mu Tianyang snorted. "There's actually such a thing?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "However, to fuse with these things, one would need to be at least a war god. Because the demon dragon is too strong, the divine power and blood it contains are also extremely terrifying. If a beast below war god were to fuse with it, it would directly explode from the demon dragon's blood and divine power." Mu Tianyang said, "So that's how it is." Qin Feiyang muttered, "It seems that the ancient castle took away the demon dragon's heart, eye, claw, and so on to prevent this. But where did the ancient castle send the demon dragon's heart and the other things to?" This was a question he couldn't figure out. The ancient castle was only so big. How could it hide the demon dragon's heart? Qin Feiyang shook his head and asked, "What about the demon ancestor's divine body?" "Back then, after shattering the demon ancestor's soul, the divine body was taken away by your ancestor," Mu Tianyang said. "Taken away by my ancestor?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Yes. At that time, I couldn't understand why he would do that. Where did he put the demon ancestor's divine body? But when I saw the 2 stone coffins sealed here, I had an uncertain answer in my heart." Mu Tianyang said in a deep voice. "What answer?" Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang said, "The thing sealed in the other stone coffin is most likely the demon ancestor's divine body." Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. "Think about it. If the thing sealed in the stone coffin isn't the demon ancestor's divine body, then why would Zhuge Mingyang and the demon ancestor desire it so much?" Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang glanced at Tang Hai, who was fighting with Zhao Tai in the distance, and said in a deep voice, "It seems that your guess is not far from the truth. That's why we have to work together. If the demon ancestor obtains the divine body and recovers his cultivation, the world will be in chaos. At that time, I'm afraid that I won't even need to make a move. Your great Qin Empire will be buried in his hands." Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang's divine body trembled slightly. It seems that this matter really needs to be thought about carefully. As for the grudge between your ancestor and me, it's even simpler. My Heavenly Sun Empire can't tolerate a peerless figure like him, and he can't stand my character and actions. The grudge accumulated little by little and finally exploded. Actually, at that time I did invite him to join the Heavenly Sun Empire and even gave him supreme status and glory. But your ancestor's temper is just that stubborn. He thought that only by eliminating me and destroying the Heavenly Sun Empire can he bring peace to the world. In the end, he did it. But now, is the world really peaceful? No, there are still endless disputes. The world is like this. You can't do whatever you want. Mu Tianyang sighed. I don't know how to judge my ancestor's actions, but I believe that he must have good intentions. Qin Feiyang said. I don't deny that, but I really can't stand his character. If he was willing to listen to me back then, and directly killed the demon ancestor and demon dragon, would there be so many problems now? Chapter 1736. You have to admit that it's because of my ancestors' benevolence that you're still alive today. Qin Feiyang said, if my ancestor had been ruthless enough to kill Mu Tianyang and eliminate the remnants of the Tianyang Empire, Great Qin wouldn't be facing the threat of Mu Tianyang now. Mu Tianyang was stunned and said with a wry smile, that's right. Your ancestor is really both lovable and hateful. What do you mean? Why aren't the two of them fighting? That's boring. The golden small beast and ice dragon hid their auras and stood at the top of the clouds like two invisible existences. Qin Feiyang and the others below did not notice them. The one who spoke was Ice Dragon. It looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang. They're communicating secretly. The golden small beast said. How do you know? Ice Dragon asked. I can guess it just by looking at them. Do I even need to ask? What a pig's head. The golden small beast rolled its eyes at Ice Dragon and looked down at Qin Feiyang. Do you know him? Ice Dragon was stunned. It looked down at Qin Feiyang for a moment and shook its head. I don't know him. Where did this wild onion come from? Wild onion. The corner of the golden small beast's mouth twitched. He's the owner of Changshui. What? Ice Dragon was surprised. The golden small beast looked at Bloodblade and said, Do you still remember that guy? Ice Dragon looked over. When it saw Bloodblade, it was stunned for a moment and then immediately laughed. The golden small beast said, It seems that you still remember. Ice Dragon said, Nonsense, of course I remember. I was the one who suppressed it in the latrine. If Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang heard these words, they would be scared out of their wits. If it was the one who suppressed Bloodblade, how terrifying was its strength? Ice Dragon's eyes suddenly had a trace of surprise. He looked at the castle and said, Damn, this is another divine weapon that little Wu Tian made. Yes, the small beast nodded. He actually has 2 divine weapons personally crafted by Lil Wutian. Who is he? Ice Dragon was bewildered. The golden small beast said playfully, Someone you can't afford to offend. You'll know in the future. TSK, in this world, is there anyone that I can't afford to offend? Ice Dragon had a look of disdain. Grandpa Frog is not joking with you. The small beast said. The Ice Dragon God was stunned. Seeing that the golden small beast really didn't seem to be joking, he lowered his head and carefully sized up Qin Feiyang. Below, Mu Tianyang glanced at Zhuge Mingying in the distance, then looked at Qin Feiyang and urged, Back to the topic, hurry up and decide. Do you want to cooperate or not? I think. Qin Feiyang was hesitating. Father, we're here to help you. Qin Feiyang died. Suddenly, 2 angry roars could be heard. Qin Feiyang and Ice Dragon God looked over at the same time. They saw 2 old men teleporting over from the void. It's them. Qin Feiyang's face sank. Mu Tianyang, on the other hand, was ecstatic, because the people who came were his sons, Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin. Moreover, the 2 of them had already stepped into the war god realm. Their aura was like a vast ocean, unfathomable. Mu Tianyang hurriedly said, Don't come here. Quickly go and help Wang Yuanshan and the others to kill Zhuge Mingying. Wang Yuanshan? Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin were stunned. It's them. Mu Tianyang pointed at Wang Yuanshan and the 3 divine overlords on the other side of the battlefield. Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin looked at the 4 of them and then looked at Zhuge Mingying. Their eyes trembled slightly. What? Even Zhuge Mingying had already broken through to the false god realm? And he was able to fight against 4 false gods alone? Shua. The 2 of them looked at each other and immediately charged towards Zhuge Mingying. Zhuge Mingying, Wang Yuanshan, and the other 2 also looked at the two of them. Damn it! Zhuge Mingyang's face sank. Wang Yuanshan and the other three were just like Mu Tianyang. They were overjoyed. With two war gods coming to help, even Zhuge Mingyang would not be able to hold on. The four of them seemed to have been injected with chicken blood as they did everything they could to restrain Zhuge Mingyang. The situation is not good. Tang Hai, stop fighting. At the same time, Zhao Tai Lai turned his head and looked at Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan. His pupils constricted as he hurriedly said to Tang Hai, "Okay, we'll fight again in the future." Tang Hai replied, "Young lord, what should we do?" Zhao Tai Lai sent a voice transmission to Qin Feiyang. "Don't worry, let's see the situation first. You guys continue." Qin Feiyang replied. Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Brother Qin, with Changfeng and Changyan here, we have a better chance. Hurry up and decide. Since Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan are here, I don't think we need to do anything. They can also kill Zhuge Mingyang." Qin Feiyang said, "What do you mean? Is what I said before not enough?" Mu Tianyang said, No. The demon ancestor is indeed terrifying, but you're also a dangerous person. If I really join forces with you to kill Zhuge Mingyang now, I'll be in a very bad situation when you guys attack me later." Qin Feiyang said, "So this is what you're worried about. Don't worry, as long as you don't stop me from taking back second brother's divine body, I won't do anything to you." Mu Tianyang said, "Can your words be trusted?" Qin Feiyang said, "What do you want? Compared to the demon ancestor, what's my threat to you?" Mu Tianyang said angrily, "Is that all you're a threat to me?" Qin Feiyang smiled. Mu Tianyang was so angry that he was shaking. Qin Feiyang said, "Let's wait and see. When it's time to make a move, I'll make a move." Stubborn. Mu Tianyang glared at Qin Feiyang angrily, then turned to look at Zhuge Mingyang's battlefield and said, "How about this? Anyway, we can't decide the winner if we continue fighting. Instead of wasting each other's energy, why don't we call a truce and watch from the side?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback, then nodded and smiled. Good idea. He had made a move to stall Mu Tianyang and prevent Mu Tianyang from joining the battle. After all, it was too easy to kill Zhuge Mingyang with the power of the blood blade. And now, since he didn't need to fight, he could still delay Mu Tianyang. That was naturally the best outcome. Okay, let's call a truce. Mu Tianyang decisively put away the blood blade. Qin Feiyang also immediately recalled the ancient castle. After thinking for a while, he looked at Mu Tianyang and said with a smile, "It seems too boring to just watch the battle. Why don't we drink a few cups?" Drink a few cups? Mu Tianyang was stunned. Then a row of black lines appeared on his forehead. He roared, "Do you know what the situation is now? How can you still be in the mood to drink? It's not drinking, it's drinking tea. I'm not interested in drinking." Qin Feiyang chuckled, took out a tea table and 2 chairs, and placed them in the void in front of him. As soon as Mu Tianyang saw the tea table and chairs, the anger in his heart became more and more uncontrollable. He said, "In this situation, what's the difference between drinking tea and drinking wine?" Qin Feiyang chuckled and sat down on the chair. He took out the tender of the blue sea and placed it on the tea table. He said with a smile, "You're too angry. You should calm down." Mu Tianyang was infuriated. Qin Feiyang slowly took out the tea leaves, and with a thought, he got some pure water from the black tortoise realm. He mobilized the power of the false god, turned it into a wisp of flame, and boiled the water to make tea. Little bastard! Mu Tianyang sat next to Qin Feiyang angrily and cursed in his heart. Damn, young master really knows how to enjoy life. In the distance, Zhao Tai Lai and Tang Hai looked at Qin Feiyang leisurely brewing tea, and their faces could not help but twitch. On the other side, Wang Yuanshan The three divine marquises and Mu Changfeng saw this scene and were speechless to the extreme. What is this bastard doing? Zhuge Mingyang was as angry as Mu Tianyang. Rumble. The battle was still ongoing. After Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng arrived at the battlefield, they did not stop and directly attacked Zhuge Mingyang. Wang Yuanshan hurriedly shouted, "Be careful, don't get close to him." Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng were shocked. But it was too late. Zhuge Mingyang made a prompt decision and activated his battle soul and divine ability. Their cultivation immediately plummeted to the semi-divinity realm. What's going on? Both of them were shocked. Wang Yuanshan said, "His divine ability has the ability to deprive cultivation." What? Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng were shocked. However, after the two's cultivation fell to the false god realm, it did not continue to fall. Qin Feiang sipped his tea and laughed. It seems that Zhuge Mingyang's divine ability does not have much effect on the war god. Facing someone of the same realm, Zhuge Mingyang's divine ability could cause the opponent's cultivation to drop by 4 small realms. But facing someone with a higher cultivation than Zhuge Mingyang, the power of the divine ability would be greatly reduced, especially the gap between the war god and the false god realm. Not much? However, hearing Qin Feiang's words, Mu Tianyang immediately became angry. Although it only dropped by 1 small realm, do you know how big the difference between the war god and the false god realm is? Originally, with Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng's war god cultivation, it was completely enough to kill Zhuge Mingyang. But now, their cultivation had plummeted, and they were in the same enchantment as Zhuge Mingyang. Not to mention killing Zhuge Mingyang, it would be good if they could defeat him. Moreover, Zhuge Mingyang's power of the false god realm had an innate advantage. In the end, it was estimated that Mu Changfeng and Mu Tianyang would be at a disadvantage. On the battlefield, Mu Changfeng's expression froze slightly and said, "Only dropped by a small realm?" Mu Changyin said, "If it's only dropped by a small realm, then it doesn't matter." "That's right. With the strength of the 2 of us, it's enough to kill him." Mu Changfeng nodded. "Go," Mu Changyin shouted, and the 2 of them continued to charge towards Zhuge Mingyang. Don't underestimate him. Pay attention to his power of the false god. Seeing that Mu Changfeng and Mu Tianyang did not retreat, Wang Yuanshan hurriedly reminded them. The power of the false god? Mu Changfeng and Mu Tianyang were stunned, but they did not take to heart. Their eyes were filled with disdain. Even if their cultivation had fallen to the false god realm, they were still 2 people. Could it be that they couldn't beat Zhuge Mingyang alone? Moreover, it was obvious that Zhuge Mingyang must have just broken through to the false god realm. How strong could he be? Qin Feiang glanced at Mu Tianyang and laughed. "I'm afraid your 2 sons will have to pay a heavy price." 2 idiots. Mu Tianyang coldly snorted and was about to scold him. Qin Feiang shook his head and laughed. No, since we are watching the battle, we naturally can't interrupt. Otherwise, it would be boring, right? Yes, that's right. Very right. Mu Tianyang nodded, gritting his teeth and glaring at Qin Feiang. Chapter 1737. On the battlefield in the void, Zhuge Mingyang stood in the wind. His long gray hair danced in the wind. He was motionless like the god of death. He looked at Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng with a deadly gaze. "Are you scared out of your wits? You don't even know how to fight back. Die." The 2 rushed in front of Zhuge Mingyang and looked at Zhuge Mingyang with a sneer. Then they attacked with all their strength. Zhuge Mingyang looked at the 2 of them and said, "You're the ones who are stupid." Swish! As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hands at lightning speed and clenched his 5 fingers together. Then he threw a punch at the 2's palms. Boom! The fists and palms met. With a loud bang, Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng were sent flying. Their arms were lacerated. How is that possible? The two of them turned pale with fright. They weren't Zhuge Mingyang's match. The pain from their arms made them feel incredulous. That's too much. Wang Yuanshan and the other three looked at each other. Although Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng's cultivation had fallen to the false god realm, their bodies were still real divine bodies. Zhuge Mingyang was only a false god realm cultivator. No matter how powerful he was, it was impossible for him to hurt their bodies. Suddenly, a terrifying thought appeared in the minds of the four of them. Could it be that Zhuge Mingyang's divine power could not only deprive them of their cultivation, but also the strength of their bodies? In other words, Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng's bodies were no longer divine bodies. Were they also false god bodies? If that was the case, then Zhuge Mingyang's divine power was too powerful. So what if you're a god of war? In my eyes, you're just an ant. Zhuge Mingyang smiled disdainfully. He took a step forward and landed in front of Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng. His palms were like blades that went straight for their lower abdomens. The two of them shuddered and regained their senses. Then they retreated without hesitation. As long as you enter this domain, you will never be able to escape from my grasp. At this moment, Zhuge Mingyang was like a god of death. With a mysterious footwork, he rushed towards the two of them with a murderous aura. Obviously, he had activated a support-type divine art. How can there be such a terrifying innate ability in this world? Mu Changfeng and the other two also activated their support-type divine arts. Their speed was comparable to Zhuge Mingyang's, but in their hearts, they were extremely anxious. This was because, in order to escape from the range of Zhuge Mingyang's innate ability, one's speed had to be faster than Zhuge Mingyang. And now, their fastest speed was only comparable to Zhuge Mingyang's. This way, there was no way to escape, Wang Yuanshan reminded. The two of you can't war god use blink. Yeah, we can teleport. Mu Changfeng and Mu Qin looked at each other, and a trace of excitement appeared on their faces. Teleportation? Is it really possible? Zhuge Mingyang muttered, a trace of ridicule in his eyes. Little brat, I'll deal with you later. Mu Changfeng and Mu Qin looked at Zhuge Mingyang and coldly said these words, then immediately turned around and teleported. However, the next moment, they froze in the air, their faces filled with shock. Unexpectedly, they were unable to teleport. What's the situation? Could it be that even the ability to teleport has been taken away? Wang Yuanshan and the other three were shocked. You guys are too naive. My innate ability is not as weak as you think. Zhuge Mingyang snickered. While Mu Changfeng and Mu Qin were distracted, he had already arrived behind them. Careful! Wang Yuanshan and the other three roared. The two regained their senses and without hesitation moved to the side. Puchi! At the same time, blood spurted out. Zhuge Mingyang's two large hands pierced into their waists, tearing off a piece of flesh. But because Mu Changfeng and Mu Qin reacted in time, they did not injure their qi ocean. However, the pain of having their flesh torn off caused their faces to distort, making them look extremely ferocious. Looking down on me, Zhuge Mingyang, you will pay the price. Zhuge Mingyang gave a sinister smile. Stepping on the support technique, like a ghost, he charged towards the two like lightning. Quickly, support him, Wang Yuanshan shouted. The three divine overlords also regained their senses. The four of them activated their techniques, bringing with them the power to destroy the world as they charged towards Zhuge Mingyang. However, the technique they were so proud of, once it entered the domain of their innate ability, its power dropped several times. Even the power of the technique can be taken away. His innate ability is almost invincible. The four of them were shocked, looking at Zhuge Mingyang again. He only lightly waved his hand, shattering their techniques. Without any hesitation, he continued to charge towards Mu Changfeng and Mu Qin. "Let's go." Mu Changfeng's pupils shrank. Grabbing Mu Changyin, they instantly disappeared. Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows, his spiritual force surging out, quickly capturing a space divine item in the void in front of him. "You think you'll be fine if you hide in the space divine item?" Zhuge Mingyang's ferocious nature erupted, leaping up, bringing the bone dragon fighting soul with him as he punched towards the space divine item. "Quickly stop him!" The three divine overlords roared. Wang Yuanshan's eyes flashed with a terrifying light. His fighting soul and battle art were all activated in an instant, fiercely charging towards Zhuge Mingyang. However, whether it was the fighting soul or battle art, as long as they entered the domain, their power would be greatly reduced. Zhuge Mingyang was like a hot knife through butter, shattering all the fighting souls and battle arts with one punch. Boom! Following closely, he punched the space divine item again. Kacha! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the space divine item actually shattered on the spot. This scene, even Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang were dumbfounded. No matter how weak the space divine item was, it was still a divine weapon. With Zhuge Mingyang's current cultivation, it was impossible for him to shatter a divine weapon. In other words, his innate superpower had also weakened the space divine item. What a terrifying innate superpower, Mu Tianyang muttered. Obviously, his innate superpower is effective against everything. Furthermore, it deprives it of its foundation. For example, the space divine item was originally made of divine iron, but under the innate superpower, it has lost the hardness of divine iron. In other words, his innate superpower deprived the divine iron of its elements, turning it into an ordinary piece of iron. Therefore, Zhuge Mingyang was able to shatter it with one punch. This guy is getting more and more terrifying. The strength he displayed in front of me in the past is just the tip of the iceberg. Qin Feiyang sighed. In the face of such an innate superpower, even he was somewhat helpless. Mu Tianyang said, "All the more reason for us to join forces and get rid of him first." "Let's wait a little longer. I believe that Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin are not good-for-nothings." Qin Feiyang laughed. "I understand their strength. If they didn't fall into that domain, it wouldn't be a problem to kill Zhuge Mingyang." But now, Mu Tianyang's brows were tightly knitted. Zhuge Mingyang definitely knew this. So he definitely wouldn't let Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin leave the domain so easily. "Don't worry. It's hard to predict the outcome until the last moment." Qin Feiyang chuckled. Battlefield. As the space divine item shattered, Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin tumbled out in a sorry state. Fortunately, they were strong enough, otherwise, they would definitely be shattered together with the space divine item. "I haven't tasted the blood of the war god. It should be delicious." Zhuge Mingyang glanced at the two and licked his lips like a man-eating demon. Boom! The grayish-white pseudo-god power rolled out and instantly enveloped the two. The two were shocked. The pseudo-god power was actually robbing them of their blood and vitality. "It's indeed delicious." Zhuge Mingyang laughed sinisterly. "Little bastard, we'll kill you." The three divine overlords roared furiously and rushed into the domain, their bodies releasing a destructive aura at the same time. Self-destruct. Zhuge Mingyang's expression changed, and he retreated without hesitation. But the moment he retreated, the three divine overlords' aura quickly dissipated. Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin took this opportunity to retreat with the three divine overlords. "Playing with me?" Zhuge Mingyang raised his eyebrows. "That's right. On the surface, we self-destructed, but in reality, we just wanted to scare you away." The three divine overlords sneered. Zhuge Mingyang took a deep breath and glanced at the three of them. You guys have already made me very angry. Angry. Now that we're prepared, what can you do to us? The three divine overlords sneered. What can I do to you guys? Zhuge Mingyang murmured and suddenly grinned, looking at Wang Yuanshan and the three divine overlords. Do you guys really know me well? What do you mean? The four frowned. Do you guys really know what I'm capable of? Do you guys really think that long-range attacks will work on me? At this moment, Zhuge Mingyang smiled brightly. An uneasy premonition arose in the hearts of the four. Leave this to us, quickly retreat. Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan shouted, feeling uneasy too. The four of them looked at each other and decisively turned around to leave. It's all my fault for allowing these four clowns to be so arrogant for so long. But it's time to stop. You guys should be prepared. 6 words killing formula. Speed formula open. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at the four of them and suddenly shouted, divine light surging from his feet. Shua! In an instant, he disappeared from everyone's sight. This is... Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan widened their eyes in anger. Qin Feiyang's arm holding the teacup trembled slightly. Zhuge Mingyang was actually teleporting. No, it wasn't teleportation. It was his speed, as if he was teleporting, which had far surpassed the auxiliary divine technique. 6 words killing formula. Speed formula. What kind of divine technique was this? In just a few blinks of an eye, Zhuge Mingyang was in front of Wang Yuanshan and the other 3. How could he be so fast? I must be dreaming. Wang Yuanshan and the other 3 stopped in the void and looked at Zhuge Mingyang's back in disbelief. Run! Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan regained their senses and hurriedly shouted. The 4 of them hurriedly turned around and fled. Can you escape? Zhuge Mingyang laughed without turning his head. His divine ability shrouded the 4 of them, causing their cultivation to drop to 7 stars combat emperor. Their speed was also greatly reduced. Chapter 1738. The 4 of them ran for their lives without looking back. However, their faces were filled with confusion. Obviously, they wanted to know why he did that. If they had used the G formula right from the start, they would have already been killed by Zhuge Mingyang. Because I like to see your faces now. I gave you hope and made you think that you could defeat me. But in the end, you realized how insignificant you are and fell into the abyss of despair. Zhuge Mingyang snickered. Divine light surged under his feet, and he appeared behind a divine overlord. His hand grabbed the divine overlord's head like an eagle's claw. No! The divine overlord screamed. His face was filled with fear. You even forgot to self-destruct. I can imagine how scared you are now. Die in despair. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were filled with bloodlust. He clenched his fist, and the divine overlord's head exploded like a watermelon. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Zhuge Mingyang's face was also covered in blood. He stuck out his tongue and licked the blood. The blood of a false god is also delicious. Demon! Looking at this scene, Wang Yuanshan and the other 2 were shocked. Mu Changfeng and Mu Changfeng also felt a sense of terror in their hearts. Who's next? Zhuge Mingyang glanced at Wang Yuanshan and the other 2 and laughed. Don't kill us! The 3 of them screamed in despair. You! Zhuge Mingyang looked around and locked his gaze on one of the divine overlords. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, the power of the false gods turned into chains that shot through the air and tied the deity overlord up. Save me! The divine overlord's body trembled as he screamed at Wang Yuanshan and the other 2. However, Wang Yuanshan and the other divine overlord were already scared out of their wits by Zhuge Mingyang's power. How could they turn around to save him? A human's life is too cheap. It's not even worth as much as a beast. Even if it's a false god. Zhuge Mingyang walked towards the divine overlord. The blood on his face, along with his hideous smile, appeared extremely terrifying. He was like a god of death, causing people to tremble. "No, I beg you, let me go." The deity overlord shuddered, and his eyes were filled with fear. He was so scared that he lost control of his bladder. "Fake god, is that all you have? What's the point of keeping someone like you alive? Your flesh and blood disgusts me." Zhuge Mingyang's face was filled with disgust. He took a step forward and crushed the deity overlord with a single palm strike. Mu Changfeng quivered, shouting, "Quick! We can't let him continue killing like this." Mu Zhangyan also regained his senses. The two of them immediately activated their divine arts and charged into the domain. The power of the deity incantation had also decreased, but only by 1 level. It was still a threat to Zhuge Mingyang. Rumble! Zhuge Mingyang was sent flying with a pale face. Now that Wang Yuanshan and his companion were saved, they immediately weakened. "Kill!" Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan looked at each other and shouted at the same time. Without the restriction of their divine abilities, they were all true war gods. Whether it was their divine arts or war souls, they were far superior to Wang Yuanshan and his companions. For a moment, Zhuge Mingyang was at a disadvantage. He was suppressed by the two. "What did I say just now?" "Your 2 sons aren't useless. Didn't they turn the situation around?" Qin Feiyang laughed. Mu Tianyang clenched his fists as his body trembled violently. Although the situation had been reversed, they had sacrificed 2 fake gods. Such a loss was a calamity for the Tianyang Empire. "Kill him! We must kill him! Wang Yuanshan, what are you doing? Are you really trash?" Mu Tianyang roared. Wang Yuanshan and the deity overlord trembled. "Trash? We are fake gods. How can we be trash?" The two stood up and rushed to the side of Mu Changfeng and his companion. Their divine arts roared in the sky as they charged towards Zhuge Mingyang again. "Humph!" Zhuge Mingyang snorted coldly as he used the speed art to charge towards the 4 of them. But at the same time, Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyan also teleported away with Wang Yuanshan and the deity overlord. "Don't forget, we are war gods, and we have the ability to teleport. As long as we are prepared, your divine abilities will not be a threat to us." The two sneered. 2 human shadow fighting souls soared into the sky from his back, their evil auras soaring to the heavens. "Shatter!" The two roared. The 2 war souls charged towards the bone dragon. Roar! Boom! The bone dragon let out a cry and shattered on the spot. Its divine abilities were also destroyed. Not bad, not bad. They actually knew to deal with Zhuge Mingyang's war souls first. This means that they haven't lost their minds. Qin Feiyang praised. If they wanted to kill Zhuge Mingyang, they had to break his divine abilities first. And to break the divine abilities, they had to shatter the war souls. Once the divine abilities were broken, Zhuge Mingyang would be like a fish on a chopping board in front of the 2 war gods. As expected, once the divine abilities were broken, a trace of panic appeared on Zhuge Mingyang's face. Mu Changfeng, Wang Yuanshan, and Mu Changfeng also seized this rare opportunity to unleash their strongest deity arts and attack Zhuge Mingyang. "You want to kill me? You must be dreaming." Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed, and he was about to enter the divine item. "Mu Zhangfeng, Mu Zhangyan, you 2 war gods are actually bullying a junior. How shameless!" But at this moment, an angry roar sounded. Then, 2 white-haired old men appeared in front of Zhuge Mingyang. Boom! The 2 of them didn't say a word and directly attacked with divine incantations, attacking the divine incantations of Mu Changfeng's group. Boom! There was a loud explosion in the void. The 2 of them actually blocked the 4 war gods' divine arts. Ancestor. Emperor Hong. Zhuge Mingyang looked at the two old men in front of him with a stunned expression. Why was there another ancestor? Then who was the other ancestor? Zhuge Mingyang turned his head and looked at Tang Hai in the distance, his eyes full of surprise. At the same time, Mu Tianyang, Mu Changfeng, and the other two were also surprised. He finally appeared. Qin Feiyang chuckled. The group of people looked at Qin Feiyang in unison. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Tang Hai, there's no need to hide. Yes, Tang Hai respectfully responded and stopped at the same time as Zhao Tailai. Then, Tang Hai turned around, took out a mask, put it on his face, and swallowed a facial restoration pill. Tang Hai, Mu Tianyang looked at Tang Hai's back and said in shock and anger, You're the Netherhall's Hall Master! Tang Hai came back to his senses and looked at Mu Tianyang, nodding, Yes, it's me! Bastard! Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang immediately glared at Qin Feiyang. It turned out that all of this was a trap set by this bastard. Qin Feiyang looked at the two, picked up the teacup, and said with a smile while drinking, Don't you think this is interesting? Give us the sarcophagus. Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang shouted at the same time. Mu Changfeng and the other three war gods, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong all stared at Qin Feiyang, murderous intent flashing in their eyes. After learning the truth, the two sides decisively chose to stop the battle. Qin Feiyang put down the teacup and glanced at the group, saying, Are you going to join forces to deal with me? Swish! At the same time, Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai teleported and rushed to Qin Feiyang's side. Looking at the group of people, their eyes flashed coldly. Mu Tianyang was furious. He smashed the tea table and tea set with a palm and shouted, You played us like this and even caused my Tianyang Empire to lose a war god and 3 false gods. Shouldn't we join forces to deal with you? The death of Mu Nanfeng and the 3 divine overlords almost drove him crazy. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and turned a deaf ear to him. He looked at the broken tea set and sighed. What a pity for this set of tender Qing Hai. Bastard, why are you still caring about the tea set? Do you even put us in your eyes? Zhuge Mingyang roared. Facing 2 groups of people, he can still be so calm. This guy's courage is not bad. At the top of the clouds, the ice dragon god was surprised. The golden small beast said, This is his personality. Who exactly is he? The ice dragon frowned and suddenly thought of something. He said in surprise, Wait, he can't be someone's reincarnation, right? It's a secret. The golden small beast smiled mysteriously. The ice dragon rolled his eyes. Below, Qin Feiyang clenched his 5 fingers, and the remaining teacup in his hand shattered. He raised his head and said with a smile, You have a total of 4 war gods and 2 false gods. As for you, Zhuge Mingyang and Mu Tianyang, your battle prowess has even reached the war god level. How could I possibly dare to underestimate you? Since you know, then give us the stone coffin. Mu Tianyang shouted. The stone coffin? Qin Feiyang murmured and laughed. That depends on whether you have the ability or not. Boom! As soon as he said that, waves of gods might erupted. Zhuge Mingyang, the state teacher, Emperor Hong, Mu Changfeng, Wang Yuanshan, and the deity overlord all flew over and surrounded Qin Feiyang's group. What? You want to bully us with numbers? But suddenly, a cold snort was heard. In the next moment, for waves of gods might descended on the group. Everyone was shocked and looked up. They saw 3 men and 1 woman standing in the air, exuding pure god's might. Qin Feiyang's face was filled with joy. The 4 of them were the mysterious madam, Old Man Qin, Yi Shu, and his cousin Lu Jiajin. What made him even more surprised was that the 4 of them had reached the war god level. Looks like he didn't need to go to the Black Tortoise world. Originally, he was going to bring Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai into the Black Tortoise world. After all, Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang teaming up was not something he could handle. Moreover, His goal had been achieved. He had killed one war god and 4 false gods, causing Mu Tianyang to suffer heavy losses. But he didn't expect that, at this time, Old Man Qin and the others would rush over. This was simply a timely reign. The 4 war gods, plus Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai, could completely suppress the alliance of Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang. My cousin, Lu Jiajin, is someone you can bully? Lu Jiajin's gaze was as cold as a blade. Gods might cover the sky and earth, oppressing the state teacher's group. Lu Jiajin, the pupils of the state teacher and the others shrank. Chapter 1739. Of course, we're not unfamiliar with the peerless monster of the Lu family. I just didn't expect you to step into the war god realm so quickly, the imperial preceptor said in a deep voice. Lu Jiajin said, "Otherwise, why would I be called a peerless monster?" This sentence was obviously full of arrogance. If it was said by someone else, it would definitely make people feel disgusted. But when it came from Lu Jiajin's mouth, no one felt disgusted at all. They felt that it was natural. Emperor Hong took a deep look at Lu Jiajin and sighed. Great Qin's #1 monster is indeed none other than you. I'm the #1 monster of Great Qin. Zhuge Mingyang roared and leaped towards Lu Jiajin. You! Lu Jiajin looked at Zhuge Mingyang. The mysterious lady glanced at Zhuge Mingyang, then glanced at Lu Jiajin and said teasingly, "Little guy, someone is provoking you." Yi Shu and Old Qin also had a playful look. Provocation is childish behavior, because I've never cared about the title of monster. Lu Jiajin said indifferently. You don't care, but others don't think so. The mysterious lady chuckled. Since that's the case, then I'll play with him and see if he's qualified to touch the title of #1 monster. Lu Jiajin said coldly and turned into a stream of light rushing into the sky. Zhuge Mingyang followed closely behind. Lu Jiajin took the lead to rush into the sky with his hands behind his back. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang with an indifferent expression. It seemed that there was nothing that could catch his attention. Swoosh! Zhuge Mingyang flew into the sky and landed in the void opposite Lu Jiajin. He sneered, "I've heard of your name, but I won't lose to you." "Is that so?" Lu Jiajin said indifferently, and his aura erupted. Waves of divine might covered the sky and earth, and the surrounding void collapsed and shattered crazily. But then, his aura quickly fell. What is he doing? Qin Feiyang and the others below were surprised. Zhuge Mingyang also stared at Lu Jiajin suspiciously. Soon, Lu Jiajin's aura fell to the false god realm. So he's suppressing his cultivation. Everyone suddenly understood. Lu Jiajin glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and calmly said, "I'm the divine god of battle. If I were to use my full strength, it would be an unfair battle. Therefore, I've suppressed my cultivation to the same level as yours. Young master, your eldest cousin is really bold. However, it is also somewhat foolish," Zhao Tailai whispered. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang frowned slightly. He didn't deny his cousin's talent, but it was unwise for him to suppress his cultivation in front of Zhuge Mingyang. The imperial tutor, Mu Tianyang, and the others all sneered. In their opinion, Lu Jiajin was digging his own grave by suppressing his cultivation. High in the sky, Zhuge Mingyang clenched his fists and stared at Lu Jiajin. "Are you looking down on me? I won't look down on anyone. Even if my opponent is immortal, I will still treat him seriously." Lu Jiajin said indifferently. "Then why are you suppressing your cultivation?" Zhuge Mingyang said angrily. "Why?" Lu Jiajin pondered for a moment and said, "If I have to find a reason, I don't want to bully you." At the top of the clouds, Ice Dragon looked at Lu Jiajin and said with a smile, "Boss Frog, I like this kid." Grandpa Frog also likes him. Calm, courage, talent, he has everything. He is a promising talent. Compared to this kid, that kid called Zhuge gives people the feeling of a clown. The golden, small beast said. Don't want to bully me, Zhuge muttered. His fists clenched tighter and tighter. His fingernails had already sunk into his flesh, and drops of grayish-white blood kept dripping down. Lu Jiajin said indifferently, It's useless to say more. Make your move. Hee. Ha. Zhuge raised his head and laughed wildly. He shouted, Surnamed Lu, you will understand in a moment how laughable your current actions are. Roar. Accompanied by a loud dragon roar, the bone dragon roared out. Its innate ability was activated instantly. Lu Jiajin's cultivation fell to 7-star combat emperor. Lu Jiajin raised his head and looked at the bone dragon with a trace of surprise in his eyes. How is it? Are you starting to regret it? It's not too late to change your mind. As long as you let go of the suppression of your cultivation, you can immediately return to the false god realm. You might even be able to fight. Zhuge laughed. So that's how it is to deprive one's cultivation. Lu Jiajin nodded and looked down at Zhuge. He said, You do have the right to challenge me. Zhuge was stunned and laughed. You really don't know what you are talking about. How dare you talk big? Whoosh! He took a step forward, and the false god realm power rolled out as he threw a punch at Lu Jiajin. Lu Jiajin's expression did not change, nor did he dodge. He raised his arm and slapped. Oh no, young master, your eldest cousin is underestimating him too much. Zhao Tailai said to himself. Qin Feiyang did not say anything. The mocking smile on the faces of the imperial advisor and the others became thicker. At this point, he still dared to fight Zhuge head-on. This person was indeed extraordinarily stupid. Boom! The fist and the palm collided. Lu Jiajin was immediately sent flying. His arm was directly shattered, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Do you see that? This is my strength. Zhuge laughed and went forward again, slapping Lu Jiajin's chest. Puff! Lu Jiajin spat out a mouthful of blood. His chest caved in, and his bones were shattered. I haven't used my full strength yet. If I had used my full strength, you would be a corpse now. Now answer me. Do you still dare to look down on me? Zhuge stopped in the air with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He looked at Lu Jiajin with disdain, his expression full of pride. Qin Feiyang glanced at Zhuge then looked at Lu Jiajin, who was in a sorry state, and muttered, Cousin, what are you doing? The imperial advisor glanced at Qin Feiyang and said with a strange smile, So this monster of the Lu family is only SOSO. Is that so? Since you dare to say such words, you must be quite powerful. Why don't we have some fun too? Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and looked at the imperial advisor, his mouth full of mockery. The imperial advisor's pupils constricted, and he sneered, I am the god of war and an elder. If I fight with a junior like you, won't others talk behind my back and say that I am bullying the weak? It's okay, I don't mind. Furthermore, I also believe that the people present will not say that you are bullying the weak. Qin Feiyang mocked. The imperial advisor clenched his fists, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. Why, you don't dare. If you don't dare, then shut your dog mouth. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly, then ignored the imperial advisor and looked up at Lu Jiajin. Little bastard, I'll let you be arrogant first. The imperial advisor gritted his teeth, looked up at Zhuge and shouted, Mingyang, kill him for me! Yes, ancestor. Zhuge nodded and looked at Lu Jiajin, who was opposite him, and said, You have lost an arm and are seriously injured. It's too late for regrets now. Leave your life here. Lu Jiajin turned a deaf ear, and his face was still calm. He murmured, So the power of a false god is different from that of an ordinary person. Stop pretending to be calm. Zhuge Mingyang roared. Lu Jiejin smiled faintly. You are just a loser. Why should I be angry? But, speaking of which, you are truly the same as your cousin Qin Feiyang. Both of you are extremely annoying. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. Loser, Lu Jiejin muttered to himself, slowly raised his head to look at Zhuge Mingyang, and said, You seem to be happy too early. Boom! A wave of fire rolled out from his body and rushed to the sky. The sky instantly turned into a sea of fire. The entire world was dyed with fire, as if it had turned into a big furnace. Zhuge Mingyang frowned. Your god of war has indeed surprised me, but it is not invincible. Lu Jiejin smiled, and a vast aura burst out from the sea of fire. Boom! In the sky, the wind and clouds suddenly surged. The sea of fire kept rolling and gradually turned into a fiery red eye, which was a few 100 feet big, like the eye of God, exuding a great pressure. Just as the eye appeared, Lu Jiejin's aura crazily soared. 8-star were Emperor. 9-star were Emperor. 9-star were Emperor peak. In the end, he stopped at the false god realm. What is going on? His cultivation has actually recovered. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai were shocked. The imperial tutor and the group were also in disbelief. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes widened in anger. His divine ability had lost its effect? He quickly raised his head and looked at the bone dragon fighting soul in the sky. The fighting soul was still there. The divine ability was still there. Since the fighting soul and divine ability were still there, why did Lu Jiejin's cultivation recover? You must be very surprised. Your divine ability is indeed very powerful. It can even be said that in today's world, there are only a few people who can break your divine ability. However, in front of me it is useless. Lu Jiejin said. Useless? Zhuge Mingyang's body trembled, and he said angrily, Why? Because of it. Lu Jiejin pointed to the fiery red eye in the sky. Zhuge Mingyang looked up and said in a deep voice, What is that? This was also what Qin Feiyang and the rest wanted to know. What exactly was that eye? It could actually break Zhuge Mingyang's divine ability. It is called the Eye of Nothingness. It is my fighting soul. Lu Jiejin said. What? It is his fighting soul. Eye of Nothingness. What kind of fighting soul is this? Why haven't I heard of it before? Everyone was surprised. I know. Mu Tianyang's voice suddenly sounded. Everyone looked at Mu Tianyang and found that Mu Tianyang's body was trembling. Are you afraid? Everyone was surprised. Eye of Nothingness. I really didn't expect you to activate this fighting soul. Mu Tianyang looked at Lu Jiejin and said with difficulty. Lu Jiejin lowered his head to look at Mu Tianyang and said, The knowledge of the previous emperor is indeed extraordinary. Chapter 1740. The ability of the Eye of Nothingness is to nullify a fighting soul's gifted superpower. Mu Tianyang said, Nullify. Everyone was surprised. That's right. The Eye of Nothingness is the same as the Heavenly Eye. It is one of the rarest fighting souls in the world. If fighting souls are divided into different grades, then the Eye of Nothingness and the Heavenly Eye belong to the top fighting souls. The Heavenly Eye has the ability to see through everything. No matter who it is, they have nowhere to hide when facing the Heavenly Eye. As for the Eye of Nothingness, it can nullify the gifted superpower of all fighting souls. Mu Tianyang said in a deep voice, Nullify the gifted superpower. I see. This is why Zhuge Mingyang's gifted superpower suddenly lost its effect. The Eye of Nothingness is too scary. Everyone was shocked. The mysterious lady laughed and said, This little guy hit it well. Yeah, after fighting side by side for so long, we didn't realize it at all. Old man Qin shook his head and laughed. The Eye of Nothingness. Nullify the gifted superpower. I didn't expect you to have such a powerful fighting soul. Why didn't you activate your fighting soul at the first moment? Are you kidding me? Zhuge Mingyang roared hysterically. Kidding you? No way. Lu Jiejin shook his head. Zhuge Mingyang said angrily, then why? Did you deliberately make me stand out in front of everyone to humiliate me? Humiliate? Is that what you think? Although I have been cultivating wholeheartedly, I have heard of Zhuge Mingyang's name. However, I didn't expect you to be such an inferior person. Lu Jiejin said coldly. I'm inferior? Zhuge Mingyang laughed. I was just testing your strength, and you said I was humiliating you. Isn't this a sign of inferiority? Lu Jiejin said. Haha, testing my strength. So, from the beginning, you didn't take me seriously. Lu, don't think that you can defeat me just because you activated the Eye of Nothingness. Let me tell you, you still have a long way to go. Even if I don't have any innate ability, I can still kill you. Zhuge Mingyang laughed sinisterly. Kill me, Lu Jiejin murmured and shook his head. If you can hurt even a strand of my hair, you win. What? So arrogant. Everyone's heart trembled. If Zhuge Mingyang could hurt even a strand of his hair, it would be considered his victory. You must be joking. Although Zhuge Mingyang's innate mystique had been nullified, one had to know that Zhuge Mingyang's strength was still quite terrifying. What right did he have to say such big words? Good. How dare you look down on me like this? I'll definitely make you pay the price. Sever character formula, kill. Zhuge Mingyang was infuriated. Along with a loud roar, he waved his hand and a ray of light sliced across the sky. It carried with it an apocalyptic aura that slashed towards Lu Jiejin. Fire Phoenix Art's fourth style, rising from the ashes. Lu Jiejin said coldly. Divine power surged, and a massive fire phoenix appeared. Chirp! The fire phoenix flapped its wings and soared high in the sky. Wherever it went, it turned into a sea of fire. Its divine power shook the heavens. This power, Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled. What's wrong? Zhao Tai-Lai was bewildered. I've also inherited the Fire Phoenix Arts, so I'm quite familiar with the power of the Fire Phoenix Arts. But this aura, Qin Feiyang's face was full of disbelief. But what? Zhao Tai-Lai asked. Qin Feiyang said the fourth style that he evolved is actually several times stronger than mine. What? Several times stronger? Could it be that the Fire Phoenix Arts that you inherited are different? Zhao Tai-Lai was shocked. No, I'm sure that the Fire Phoenix Arts that we mastered are the same. Qin Feiyang said. Then why is his Fire Phoenix Arts stronger than yours? Zhao Tai-Lai asked. There's only one explanation. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice and clenched his hands tightly. What explanation? Zhao Tai-Lai was bewildered. Qin Feiyang said he has increased the level of the Fire Phoenix Arts. Increase the level of the Fire Phoenix Arts, Zhao Tai-Lai muttered and looked up at Lu Jiejin. He saw the Fire Phoenix streaking across the sky and colliding with the startled swan. An unexpected scene appeared. The Fire Phoenix actually had the upper hand. The startled swan lasted for less than 3 breaths before it shattered and disintegrated. This Zhao Tai-Lai was dumbstruck. True enough. Qin Feiyang's eyes shone. He had personally experienced Zhuge Mingyang's sever-word art. Although it could not be compared to the 6-word divine art, it was almost on par with the divine dragon art. The Fire Phoenix Arts was slightly weaker than the divine dragon art. As such, the Fire Phoenix Arts was also weaker than the sever-word art. However, right now, in the confrontation between Zhuge Mingyang and Lu Jiejin actually had the upper hand. What did this mean? It meant that Lu Jiejin had indeed increased the level of the Fire Phoenix Arts. In other words, the lethality of the Fire Phoenix Arts that Lu Jiejin had mastered had already surpassed the divine dragon art. Increasing the level of the divine art. Your cousin's talent is too heaven-defying. Zhao Tailai smiled bitterly. That's right, Qin Feiyong sighed. This big cousin was indeed worthy of being called the peerless genius of the Liu family. But soon after, the corners of his mouth lifted slightly and he smiled. However, he is not the only one in this world who can increase the level of the divine art. There is someone else. Zhao Tailai was shocked. Yes, Qin Feiyong nodded. Who? Zhao Tailai asked. Qin Feiyong said, It's all in front of you, Zhuge Mingyang and I. You and Zhuge Mingyang? Zhao Tailai was shocked. My void-returning art and Zhuge Mingyang's azure dragon art both relied on our own hard work to increase the level of the divine art. I also believe that sooner or later I will be able to increase the level of the Fire Phoenix art and even the divine dragon art like Big Cousin. Qin Feiyong laughed. TSK, TSK, TSK. You guys are really a bunch of perverts. Zhao Tailai shook his head and sighed. Increasing the level of a deity art required more than just talent. It also required extraordinary comprehension and opportunity. It could be said that this was a very difficult thing. Out of 1 million people, it was already very good to be able to produce one. Looking at Zhuge Mingyang again. At this moment, he raised his head and looked at the Fire Phoenix in astonishment. Obviously, this scene caused him to be rather shocked. It can actually block the sever word technique, suddenly. He retracted his gaze, lowered his head to look at Lu Jiajin, and laughed sinisterly. Amazing, amazing. You actually increased the level of the Fire Phoenix art. Other than me and Qin Feiyong, you are the third. You flatter me, Lu Jiajin said indifferently. What are you so proud of? If you think that you can block my attack with just the Fire Phoenix art, then you're too naive. Zhuge Mingyang roared. The divine light beneath his feet surged. He activated the Ji word technique and instantly rushed behind Lu Jiajin. Immediately, a victorious smile appeared on his face, and he said, You are the one who said that as long as I hurt a single strand of your hair, I'll win. Don't regret it. As soon as he finished, he raised his arm like lightning and grabbed towards Lu Jiajin's hair. Yes, I said that, but you can't do it. Lu Jiajin's face was filled with confidence. Just as Zhuge Mingyang's big hand was about to grab his hair, a fiery red barrier suddenly expanded with Lu Jiajin as the center. The sudden scene caused Zhuge Mingyang's eyelids to twitch, and he retreated without hesitation. The barrier expanded to 100 feet before it stopped abruptly. The surging flames illuminated all directions. Zhuge Mingyang frowned, glanced at the barrier, and suddenly sneered. I thought it was some kind of trump card. It turns out that it's just an ordinary barrier. It really scared me. Swish. Finished. He activated the Ji word technique again and rushed behind Lu Jiajin. The power of the false god surged and punched out. Even the void began to distort. However, when that punch landed on the spirit formation did not even tremble in the slightest. How is this possible? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were wide open in anger. The Imperial Preceptor and the others below also had a look of disbelief. Qin Feiyong also looked at the barrier in disbelief. Suddenly, his eyes trembled, and he said, This is not a simple divine force barrier. It is formed by a divine art, and it is not an ordinary divine art. Formed by a divine art? Everyone was surprised. It was also at this time that Lu Jiajin turned around, facing Zhuge Mingyang, and said lightly, The fifth style of the Fire Phoenix art, Divine Phoenix Domain, please enlighten me. Before his voice faded, one by one, palm-sized fire phoenixes rushed out of the barrier and danced around it. What? The fifth style? Below there was an uproar. Lord Emperor Hong, is there a fifth style of the Fire Phoenix art? The Imperial Preceptor looked at Emperor Hong and asked, I don't remember. Emperor Hong shook his head. Young master, have you inherited the fifth style? Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai also looked at Qin Feiyong in shock. No, Qin Feiyong said. Then, how could he have the fifth style? Everyone looked at Lu Jejin again, their eyes full of surprise. The fifth style, Divine Phoenix Domain. What the hell is going on? I remember that Lu Zheng has never used this style. Could it be that Lu Zheng has been hiding something from everyone? Qin Feiyong's mind was also in a mess. Divine Phoenix Domain, high up in the sky. Zhuge Mingyang also looked at the barrier in surprise. Why hadn't he seen Qin Feiyong use this style before? Lu Jejin said. This style even my Lu family's ancestors didn't know, only I know. How is that possible? Wasn't your fire phoenix art passed down from an inheritance? Zhuge Mingyang said. Yes, the fire phoenix art is inherited, but the divine phoenix domain is a continuation of the four styles of the fire phoenix art and self-created. It has an absolute defense. With your current strength, you will never be able to break it. Lu Jejin said. Self-created. Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. Below, Qin Feiyong, Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, Mu Tianyang, Emperor Hong, as well as the Imperial Preceptor and the others were all dumbfounded. It was actually a divine art that he created himself. How was this possible? How old was he to be able to create his own divine art? Creating one's own divine art and raising the level of one's divine art were two completely different concepts. Raising the level of a divine art was based on the foundation of a divine art or a battle art. In other words, there was a sample of it. To use the simplest analogy, it was like drawing a picture. With a sample as a reference, it was much easier to imitate. Chapter 1741. It was the same for self-created divine arts. This was a divine art that had been created out of thin air without any foundation. Of course, Lu Jejin had also said it before. He created the divine phoenix domain by continuing the four moves of the fire phoenix arts. In other words, there was still a reference. This reference was the four moves of the fire phoenix arts. But even so, it was still very shocking. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Emperor Hong sighed. A peerless genius, a peerless genius. His talent and comprehension are on par with the ancestor of the Lu family, Lu Zhanyang. So the ancestor of the Lu family is called Lu Zhanyang. Qin Feiyong muttered. Who? High up in the sky. Zhuge Mingyang took a deep breath, looked at Lu Jejin and said, I admit your talent is better than mine, even better than Qin Feiyong, but what absolute defense, what unbreakable in your lifetime is simply a joke. Watch how I break your divine phoenix domain. Bone dragons, Bone dragon, celestial phenomenon. Demonic hand. Zhuge Mingyang roared, and instantly evolved 3 great divine arts, crazily attacking the divine phoenix domain. Boom! In an instant, Lu Jejin was drowned by the 3 great divine arts. A destructive aura swept in all directions. However, when everything calmed down and Lu Jejin appeared, everyone was shocked to find that the divine phoenix domain did not show any signs of breaking. Lu Jejin, who was standing inside the divine phoenix domain, was even more unscathed. How is this possible? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes trembled. Is this the monster of the Lu family? The Imperial Grandmaster muttered, a trace of worry creeping onto his old face. Once, Zhuge Mingyang had been repeatedly defeated by Qin Feiyong and had suffered quite a blow. It was not easy for him to regain his confidence, but now he was actually defeated by Lu Jejin. If he was not careful, he would probably fall into the same situation as before and never be able to recover. How is it? Lu Jejin looked at Zhuge Mingyang, his eyes extremely calm, without any contempt. However, Zhuge Mingyang felt a great sense of humiliation. Why, As if Qin Feiyang wasn't enough, now there's Lu Jiajin. God, why are you doing this to me? I refuse to accept this. I can't accept this. Zhuge Mingyang roared into the sky like a wild beast that had gone berserk. He pointed his index finger in the air, and a gray-white pentagram appeared in the sky. And in the center of the pentagram, there was a striking word: annihilation. A destructive aura roared out from the word destroy. The wind howled, and the surrounding void shattered. Void shatter. This power has already reached the level of a war god. Everyone's heart shuddered. However, Lu Jiajin's expression remained unchanged, appearing extremely calm. Extermination symbol art. Crush him! Zhuge Mingyang roared, his eyes bloodshot. The pentagram shattered the sky as it shot towards Lu Jiajin. With a loud bang, the divine phoenix domain also began to distort. Shatter it! Hurry up and shatter it! Zhuge Mingyang stared at the divine phoenix domain and shouted crazily. However, as time passed, the pentagram gradually dissipated, and the destructive aura also slowly subsided. However, the divine phoenix domain did not shatter in the end. How could this be? The extermination symbol art is already my strongest technique, but it still can't break the divine phoenix domain. Why? Why is this happening? I hate it. Lu, I'll fight you to the death, Zhuge Mingyang muttered. His confidence was severely damaged, even more so than when he was defeated by Qin Feiyang. In the end, he went completely crazy. His aura erupted without reservation as he rushed towards Lu Jiajin. How pitiful! However, a pitiful person must have something to hate. Let me send you on your way. Lu Jiajin whispered. The fire phoenix that had been hovering in the sky suddenly swooped down, turning into a wave of fire that drowned Zhuge Mingyang. No, I can't accept this. Zhuge Mingyang's resentful roar sounded in the wave of fire. Mingyang! The Imperial Preceptor's aura erupted as he hurriedly rushed towards the sky. Old Man Qin took a step forward and stood in front of the Imperial Preceptor. He smiled and said, "Don't interfere in the battle between the young people. Get lost." The Imperial Preceptor roared as his divine power poured out and rushed towards Old Man Qin. Humph! Old Man Qin snorted as his divine power surged out. Boom! The two divine powers collided with a loud bang. The void shattered and the sky collapsed. Both of them were true war gods. One could imagine their destructive power. At the same time, the Imperial Preceptor and Old Man Qin's body trembled slightly as a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of their mouths. Ancestor, I can't accept this. It was also at this moment. Zhuge Mingyang's roar once again sounded in the wave of fire, followed by his body being torn apart. Mingyang, old thing, get out of my way. The Imperial Preceptor bared his teeth and roared at Old Man Qin before crazily rushing forward. You and I will have a battle in the end. Let's settle it here today. Old Man Qin's eyes also flashed with shocking killing intent. His divine power completely erupted as he directly fought with the Imperial Preceptor in the void. Swish! At the same time, Emperor Hong's eyes flashed with killing intent as he teleported and rushed towards Jia Jin like lightning. I won't allow you to bully a junior. The mysterious lady smiled coldly and shouted, Yi Shu! Yes, Yi Shu respectfully responded. He took a step forward and stood in front of Emperor Hong, saying, Your opponent is me. You think you're worthy? Emperor Hong sneered. You'll know once you try. Yi Shu smiled, his divine power gushing out as he threw a punch. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Emperor Hong's killing intent rose as he flashed forward and slammed his palm towards Yi Shu's fist. With a loud bang, a world-destroying airwave suddenly rolled out with the two as the center. Puff! Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. I didn't expect you to have some strength. Emperor Hong was surprised. This old man's strength is far more than this. Yi Shu sneered. Boom! The battle between the two began immediately. Below, Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyin glanced at each other, and a monstrous killing intent burst out from their bodies as they rushed towards Qin Feiyang like lightning. Do you think we're air? Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyang. Mu Changfeng stared at Tang Hai and asked, Those two sarcophagi are on you, right? Yes. Tang Hai nodded. Then killing you is the same, Mu Changfeng said. Is that so? Tang Hai's eyes flashed with a cold light. The next moment, like a ghost, he appeared behind Mu Changfeng and Tang Hai. His hands reached out, grabbed their arms, and threw them back with force. The two immediately smashed into a mountain range thousands of miles away like meteorites. Zhao Tailai, you can't fight here, or you'll hurt the young master, Tang Hai said. Understood. Zhao Tailai nodded. The two immediately rushed towards the mountain range. Boom! Soon, the battle over there also broke out. What should we do? Wang Yuanshan glanced at the battlefield and looked at the remaining divine overlord next to him. The divine overlord smiled bitterly and said, We're just false gods, we can't help at all. However, Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang didn't seem to see any of this. They raised their heads and looked at Zhuge Mingyang without blinking. Zhuge Mingyang's torn body was slowly turning into ashes under the burning waves. But even so, the two couldn't let down their guard, because they both knew that the demon ancestor was still hiding in Zhuge Mingyang's body. But unexpectedly, the demon ancestor still didn't appear. Soon, the last piece of flesh was also burned to ashes by the waves of fire. What's going on? Why didn't the demon ancestor appear to save Zhuge Mingyang? Mu Tianyang retracted his gaze and turned to Qin Feiyang and asked in surprise. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What is this person doing? Mu Tianyang looked at the sky again. The waves of fire gradually dissipated. Zhuge Mingyang had completely disappeared, and there was no trace of the demon ancestor. Could it be that even the demon ancestor was burned to ashes? Qin Feiyang frowned. A moment later, Mu Tianyang suddenly smiled and said, I think the demon ancestor hidden in Zhuge Mingyang's body should only be a strand of divine sense. Divine sense? Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Tianyang. That's right. Otherwise, why would he leave him in the lurch? Mu Tianyang smiled. In other words, the demon ancestor isn't dead. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, It's easier said than done to kill him. Mu Tianyang sighed deeply and said with a smile, But no matter what, Zhuge Mingyang's death is a good thing for us. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. The two let out a long breath at the same time. Zhuge Mingyang's threat was too great. If they didn't get rid of him, there would be endless trouble in the future. The most important thing was, Zhuge Mingyang died in the hands of Lu Jiejin, and there was no possibility of him being resurrected in the future. Looking at Lu Jiejin again, after killing Zhuge Mingyang, his eyes were as calm as ever, as if nothing could move him. The divine phoenix domain and the eye of nothingness also quickly dissipated. Swoosh! He glanced at the battlefield and landed beside Qin Feiyang. A smile finally appeared on his cold face as he said, Little cousin, long time no see. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a smile, At first, Lu Zhang asked me to find you as soon as possible, saying that he was afraid that you would be in danger. Now it seems that we were worrying too much. Lu Jiejin couldn't help but laugh and said, What is Lu Zhang doing? He's comprehending the profound meaning of becoming a god. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Jiejin nodded and said with a smile, Not bad. Your progress is faster than I expected. No matter how much I improve, I can't catch up with you. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. Lu Jiajin said, "Don't be discouraged." Lu Jing sighed. "You will surpass me sooner or later." Really? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Why didn't he believe it? No matter when or where, don't lose your fighting spirit. You are younger than me, and your future is limitless. Your goal is also to surpass the Qin Emperor. What am I to you? Compared to the Qin Emperor, I am much worse. Lu Jiajin laughed and turned to Mu Tianyang. He said with a smile, "I have long heard of the legend of the Tianyang warlord. I have admired you for a long time. Why don't you compare notes with me?" Mu Tianyang looked at Lu Jiajin silently. "However, you're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.